Opening credits. Rock Hard Retreat. A Rockstar Second Chance Romance. By Summer Cooper. Auto-narrated, using Google technology. Chapter 1.
Jerrik. I could have been doing something more important, instead of being dragged to rehab like a naughty teenager. The car came to a stop, and I stubbornly kept my eyes closed and arms folded over my
censored
earbuds, blasting music in my ears. I knew what I needed, and it was to be left alone. There was stillness, then a hand yanked my earbuds, and I looked up at the culprit with a scowl. He just rolled his eyes. "Don't give me that look, Jerrik. You're doing this." His voice was grim and unyielding. "I'd rather not," I muttered, not moving, but he heard anyway and gave me an exasperated look. "Look, kid. I'm your agent, and you've been the hand that feeds me, but enough is enough. The label's about to kick you out. This was the only way that I could save you. Otherwise, not only would you be out of a job, so would I. You know the drill." I jumped out of the car before he said another word. He was making my hangover even worse. I wanted to tell him where to take his speech and his rehab, but he was right and I knew it. Tom had been sticking up for me for the last few months, but it was clear that my voice was dying, and so was my career. Why, of all places, do I need to be here? I'm sure there are plenty of other places I could have gone to, right? Someplace less rural. I looked around doubtfully. I didn't like what I saw. I didn't even care that I was whining. I felt I was justified. Of all places, a retreat out in the middle of nowhere on a reclusive mountain was the last place I thought they'd send me. I'd imagined some fancy hotel, maybe near a beach. But a few seconds under the burning sun, a glance around at the arid land, and I wanted to run far, far away. The whole thing is already paid for, so complain all you want, but you're not getting out of this without getting dropped from the label. Maybe if you'd listened when I was telling you this retreat needed to happen, then you might have had a better pick. Tom, my agent, was rubbing his big belly, the one that I'd been feeding for the last 5 years, and now he was talking to me as if I was some kind of jock. He was the one who should be
censored
my ass and begging me to go to this retreat, otherwise he would have to go on a diet. Then again, so would I, one that didn't involve drugs and alcohol, the two things that I could do with right now. Damn it, I cursed as I kicked at a stray rock with boots that I'd bought on a binge. I had no idea how much I paid for them, but it was probably way too much, kick-ass or not. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be on a retreat at all. When he'd brought it up, I thought he was joking. There was no way they could just drop me, Tom, or the label. I was a big enough name to believe that, but they proved me wrong, and now here I was. There aren't that many people here. Of all places, did you have to send me to the middle of nowhere? I'm going to be so damned bored around here. I can't even see any women around. Tom sighed, as if he'd had enough of my constant complaining. "You're a grown-ass man, not a peacock," Tom drawled, and even with his back to me I knew he was rolling his eyes. "Can you at least act like one for once? So what if you don't have women fawning over you for a few weeks? I'm 25, a man and a freaking rock star. What do you expect?" He stopped abruptly, and I almost walked into his back. When he turned around to give me a raised eyebrow, I was scowling. "You are not here for
censored.
That is the last thing you need right now. Tiffany was the best thing that could have happened to you. She was trying to get you on the straight and narrow, and you had to go and cheat on her." I rolled my eyes and scoffed. "Yeah, but she knew what I was like. She knew that if I got the taste for a lady, then I had to keep going back for more." He was shaking his head with an almost sympathetic look on his face. "Are you sure that you weren't taking drugs on the way here? For crying out loud, Jerrik. Tiffany put up with your shit, day in and day out. You cheated on her once. She forgave you. You got drunk. She sobered you up. She was all smiles in front of the camera. Why she loved your ass, no one knows." Shit, he was sounding like a broken record, one that I didn't feel like listening to right now. You just kept pushing her, and when she found you in bed with not only one fan but two, well, she left your ass. If you weren't such an asset, I would have dumped your ass too. You're leaving me here, aren't you? I growled and ignored his diatribe. For your own good, though. He paused, but at my stubborn expression, because I couldn't see how this was for me, he sighed. Look, kid. You have a shitty attitude. You've been in this business for 5 years. You're only 25, but even that young, with the way you're going, you'll burn out quickly in this industry, acting the way you do, treating people the way you do. Acting shitty to people makes you a shitty person, and while there are people that could keep all the fame even with the attitude, I hate to break it to you, but you are nowhere near that big yet. I growled at that last bit. He didn't have to tell me that. I knew I wasn't quite that big yet, but I had enough of a following to be proud. After all, going from a nobody to being known by more than 1 million people was a big enough feat for me. What does it matter if you people get what you want? Quality music that sells. It's not like I haven't delivered that, right? It's my only job, so why can't I live my life the way I want, huh? He sighed, looking exasperated. That isn't the way this works. Rock stars behaving badly are a thing of the past. Not your generation. Now the fans want rock stars to appear dirty, but they don't want to hear of them lying drunk on the street, passed out in a hospital due to a possible overdose, and their girlfriend, who the fans loved, leaving them and vocally saying the reason why she's leaving. Shit, that kind of stuff hurts your image. It doesn't matter if you sing the greatest rock song of all time. No one's going to listen to it on the radio or watch you on YouTube, because they're going to associate your name, voice, and everything with a washed-up loser. What the F, Tom? That's a bit strong. Listen and hear me well, he said, looking like he was about to talk down to a little kid. You can't sink any lower. If you do, then you won't even be able to buy a bottle of Coke, let alone drugs to snort up your nose. Very few people ever survive that, and come out of it without taking quite a few hits. You got lucky, a poor kid that managed to make it big on his first try, but you're letting the fame get to your head. People are cruel. If the public decides to, they could drop you fast and pick a new favorite to fawn over. Hell, you're lucky you lasted 5 years. I rolled my eyes. Right, as if I hadn't worked my ass off to get to where I was. I felt I deserved to act how I pleased, but everyone else seemed to have a different idea. He scowled at me. No, kid. I'm serious. I still remember what you were like when you were brand new. I don't know what happened to turn you into this, but it needs to stop. I'm not the only one hoping this retreat will get you back to what you used to be, make you remember that kid that came out of nowhere and impressed a bunch of bigwigs to get himself signed. With that he turned and marched away, and I slowly followed because I had to. I sneered at Tom's back, then looked around. I was going to stay at a yoga retreat, something I found ridiculous because I didn't give a damn about yoga. I didn't understand why it had to be up on a mountain, with dirt and patches of grass on the ground here and there, and a bunch of trees in the distance. There were scattered buildings of different shapes and sizes, all done in creams and browns. Most people would probably find it soothing to be away from city noise, but I loved the distractions that came with living in the city. As far as I was concerned, this was a personal hell that I was being subjected to. Then I saw a group of women walking in our direction, and I arched an eyebrow. Well, the stay might not be all that bad. At least the place wasn't deserted, and these ladies didn't look half bad. A couple of them glanced our way and did double takes, alerting the rest of the group to stare. I grinned, more to myself than for their benefit. I was well built, with dirty blonde hair and tattoos that were showcased by my low-neck loose tank top. I was used to getting looks from women, and I slid easily into the familiar role. Hey there, ladies, I called as they grew nearer. I don't suppose any of you would be willing to show the new guy around for a few hours? And preferably end up in bed for several more? A lot of my fun would be cut down thanks to me being here, but I intended to make the most of it, and what better way? Maybe with the right company, I would feel less trapped on this retreat. A few in the group responded with flirtatious smiles that had my interest growing. "We'd love to if you can find us later," one of them nearly purred. I hummed. I liked the sound of that. I didn't even realize I'd slowed until Tom cleared his throat, loudly and obviously, and I was tempted to scowl at him again. Instead, I sent a wink to the group of ladies. "I'll find you all later," I promised to a round of giggles. Then I went after Tom, feeling much better about my stay there. That was until we made it to reception to check me in, and I spotted the last person I would have expected to see at a place like this. Even after having been away from my hometown for 5 years, I would have recognized her anywhere, like I still remember most of the people from my old small town. Their faces run through my head like a hurricane every time I sit down to write lyrics. They are the reason that I'm so famous, the ones that stood and watched me destroy my life. I remember all of them, even if none of them recognized me. Sharon was someone I knew, though not well, from back home. I don't know when she left. I didn't keep in touch with anyone back there, but her being there couldn't mean anything good for me. In a flash, it all came running through my mind the moment I saw her. Usually, it happens when I shut my eyes and focus, or I need to write a new song and I need inspiration. My darkness helps me focus on the madness of my past, the shit that makes me snort, makes me drink, and makes me want to revel in the pain. Sharon saw me as I started to think about the real reason that I was here. I drank for a reason, took drugs to ease the pain. It was as if the moment she saw me, I was reliving my nightmare with my eyes wide open. My feet moved without my permission, stumbling back, only for a hand on my shoulder to stall me. I looked away from Sharon to Tom, who was staring at me with a hard gaze, enough to make me flinch. "Don't you even dare, Jarek. You stay here, and you go through the damn program, or you might as well say goodbye to the record label." Like I needed him to remind me. He had spent most of the car journey doing that, and from the moment we hit the retreat, he'd been telling me about my life and the reason that we were here today. No good reason, because right now, everything in my life was shit, just like it used to be in the past.
Chapter 2. Sharon. Why did it have to be here, of all places? I lamented, but kept my thoughts to myself as I watched Jarek from across the check-in counter. By the look on his face, he hadn't expected me either. Holy crap. I'd signed up working here on a lie, a premise, the type that girls like me need to tell to get away from our past. I told the center that I was brought up by a bunch of hippies, the type that believed in yoga, the ones that inspired me to be a teacher. That's the message that my boss Henry wanted to hear, and I had convinced him that I'd lived by this belief my whole life. Jarek should be in the city somewhere, doing drugs, alcohol, and women, if the tabloids were anything to go by. Then again, the same magazines and websites that posted seedy stories about him had started up a rumor that he would be sent out on a retreat after his last scandal, and that it would be where I worked, but I had wished fervently that the rumors were false. I had no
censored
to see a familiar face, and Jarek's was perhaps the least welcome. I wanted to turn and run, but I had a job to do, and Jarek of all people wasn't going to send me running, even though I had my hands clenched on the counter with the temptation to duck down underneath it, even when he'd already laid eyes on me. "Excuse me, sir?" I called tentatively, watching as the two of them were locked in some stare down. "I still need some of your details for check-in." The man that had his hand on Jarek's shoulder turned to me with a polite smile. "Ah, it's only this guy over here. I just brought him here." I was tempted to ask if he was Jarek's babysitter. Instead I asked, "And you are, sir?" He looked at me curiously, and I felt my face warm a little when I realized that was probably not something I should be asking. Still, he answered, "I'm his agent, Tom. I'll be leaving him here, so please take good care of him." My face warmed some more, but at least I bit back the harsh no that I wanted to say instead. "Well, I need information from one of you for check-in, so who will be giving me that?" Tom slapped Jarek on his shoulder before pushing him ahead. Jarek stumbled and shot Tom a glare before his eyes turned back to me with a frown. "What do you need from me?" He looked as though he wanted to run just as fast as I did. As we went through the process, he had his eyes on me the entire time, while I did my best to avoid his gaze. At least, he wasn't saying anything about how we apparently knew each other. "All right," I said finally, breathing a sigh of relief. "I have everything, and your room is ready. Would you like to go there now, or?" I looked up to meet his eyes and my voice trailed off. His eyes were staring intently at me, and I resisted the urge to flinch back from the look on his face. I had to get him aside and talk to him before he said anything he shouldn't. Tom finding out wouldn't be a problem. Tom would be leaving in a bit, but I would be stuck with Jarek for a few weeks. Acting like I didn't know him would be pointless. He obviously recognized me the moment he saw me, and that was probably the reason why his own eyes were just a little wider than normal. He probably wasn't happy to see me either. "Oh joy. I could show you the way to your room," I offered. Of course, it was just so I could get him alone and talk to him, before he had a chance to give me away. I was lucky to be alone when they entered the reception. Someone else usually sat behind the counter with me, but he'd left because he was called elsewhere. Besides that, Jarek hadn't made it obvious that he knew me yet. "That right there is my cue to leave," the agent said, then turned to give Jarek a look. "I will be checking in on you. And don't you dare think of skipping out early." Jarek frowned at the other man. "Where would I go?" "How? Unless you're leaving me the car." Tom scoffed. "You can be creative, don't play with me, kid. And like hell I'm leaving you with my car." "You could have let me come with my own," he pointed out. "Yeah, no. That way you would definitely run." He turned to me with a wink and a smile. "Take care of my boy for me, would you? Sorry in advance if he causes any trouble. I'm sure deep down inside he's good." Jarek's frown grew fierce, and my lips rose in a small smile, a little amused in spite of myself. Jarek said something quietly, probably a curse, and the agent left, laughing as he went. Then Jarek and I were left alone, and whatever amusement I felt died quickly. I was a little surprised when he broke the silence between us first. "So, am I imagining things, or are you who I think you are?" I stared at him with my lips pursed, unsure of how to go ahead with this now that I had him alone. I couldn't exactly threaten him. If what I'd been hearing and reading of him as of late were true, he wouldn't take to a threat well. He might even expose me out of spite because of it, and the last thing I wanted was to make him mad. "Or are you just a doppelganger? Long-lost twin," he went on when I took too long to answer, his eyes narrowing. "Are you Sharon?" I couldn't even be surprised. Of course, he would remember me when I would rather he didn't, even with all the years that had gone by. Not that we'd ever been all that close, at best passing acquaintances, but it didn't change that we did know each other. "There's no long-lost twin, Jarek. That only happens in the movies." He snorted and grinned, though it wasn't a happy look. So I was right. "What are you doing all the way out here, Sharon?" "None of your business," I shot back almost immediately, then bit my lip, reminding myself that I was trying not to antagonize him. I needed a job, and I got one here. That was all he needed to know. But his eyes narrowed on me like he knew that wasn't all there was to it. "Do you have luggage with you?" I asked, looking at him with a frown. I came out from behind the counter and waited. "I might as well show you the way now. I can leave a note so someone else brings in your bags." He waved a hand over his shoulder. "Tom'll bring my stuff in for me, he'll probably just leave it here." I nodded. I reached behind the counter for a pad and pen and wrote down a quick note. The staff member I was supposed to be manning the counter with should be returning soon. "It's this way," I told Jarek, reaching behind the counter again to get his room key and handing it over to him. I made sure our fingers didn't touch as we passed the keys, and he obviously noticed by the sideways look he sent me. We were silent on the way, as I was thinking of just what to tell him and how to keep my cover with him around. We got to his room too soon. I didn't know what to say yet, and he stopped with me. He didn't make a move to get inside the room, instead he turned to face me. "What did you want to tell me?" he asked slowly. "There's got to be something, or you would have let me go on my own with directions instead of offering to show me, wouldn't you?" "It's actually part of my job," I said, mildly offended. "Yeah, but see, I have a feeling you want to avoid me, or you would have said something about knowing me the second you recognized me. Isn't that right, Sharon?" I scowled at him. I wasn't sure if he was just bluffing, but either way, he was spot on. Of course, I knew avoiding him wouldn't be possible. I wouldn't always be stuck at reception, and we could meet just about anywhere in the retreat. I had to take the chance to talk to him now, or I would regret it later. "Look," I muttered, glancing around to make sure we were alone, then stepped closer to Jarek and met his gaze. "I got the job here because my employers think I have a clean history. They have standards for their employees, and I just kept my past life private. There wasn't anything that big in my background, at least not the kind that would put me on a cop's radar. But the service industry tended to be particular about employees, and the retreat was probably even stricter than most hotels would be. If anyone found out about my background and the kind of shit I got up to when I was a misguided teenager, I would probably lose my job." Jarek's eyebrows shot up, and he looked almost entertained. "So you lied?" I winced, not wanting to think of it that way, but knowing he wasn't entirely wrong either. "Yeah, Jarek, you could say that. I have a good thing going on for me here, and I don't want that to change just because you're here." He eyed me for a moment in consideration, and I hoped he wasn't just thinking of a way to screw me over. I didn't mention that he clearly had things to hide himself. It was the only possible reason he was at a retreat in the first place, acting like it wasn't his idea to be there at all. But I didn't want to make him think I was trying to blackmail him, because he might get the idea to do the same to me. Then his eyes lit up in a way that I didn't like, and I resisted the urge to take a step back. I realized when he took one forward that I should have anyway. "So what you're saying is, you want me to keep your secrets?" I arched an eyebrow at his expression, looking almost happy with himself. "And I'll keep yours," I said and stared back unblinking. He reacted, his eyes going cold for a second, his lips flattened, but the look was gone almost immediately, as he realized I was challenging his threat and giving him one back. "Because we both have secrets we want kept, and I'm asking Jarek, keep your mouth shut." "Maybe," he muttered, "but you need this job, don't you?" "I don't need to be here. I could probably talk my way out of staying, but what happens to you, I scowled at him. I would be out of a job for one thing, and I would be out of a home. I'd have to move somewhere else, look for another job, start anew. "Jarek, look. I'm asking for a favor, and I know you don't have to listen to me, but please don't mention to anyone that we knew each other before today. It would only bring up questions that neither of us want to be asked." His lips pursed, and I felt a spike of anger go through my
Censored.
If he didn't listen to me, what could I do? I didn't want to start packing to leave. The anger burned in my
Censored.
resentment mingled with it as I felt my hands begin to shake. Why did he have to come here and ruin things for me in the first place? "What will you give me?" He asked it like a naughty child, one that thought he was being cute. I scoffed as I looked at him. Did he really think that would work? The anger began to fade away and made space for my confusion as I blinked at him. "Excuse me?" He took another step forward, and I took one back instinctively. We repeated the dance until I felt my back hit a wall, and I jumped in surprise. Jarek stood in front of me, not touching but a little too close for comfort. "I'm just wondering what this job of yours is worth to you. See, I didn't want to come here, I was told to come here. Now, I'd like to have a little fun during my stay, or I'll probably die of boredom. There's plenty to do around here, you don't have to be bored," I said quickly, deliberately sidestepping his meaning. A slow smile grew on his face, and I hated to admit it, but he was attractive, and that smile only made him even more so. His brown eyes gave me a look I could only describe as one of
censored.
and I felt my breath hitch in my throat. He leaned closer so I could feel his minty breath wash over my face, and all I could look at were those eyes. That is true, there's plenty to do. But do you want to know what I want? He murmured, turning on his charm. His body inched just a little closer to mine, and I could feel his warmth. I'd like to have you in my bed, doing some not-so-innocent things. I've always wanted you, Sharon. Want to give me a chance? My body trembled because of his nearness, that look in his eyes and the tone of his voice low and husky. I'd always wanted him too, but I'd never admit it. Not to him. I wasn't that easy. I pressed my hand to his
censored
and gently pushed him back. His eyes widened a little in surprise, but he backed up, and I moved quickly away from the wall. "We're not doing that, Jarek," I said point blank. "And now, if you don't mind, I have work to do." I turned my back on him, and made my way back to the front desk and Sanity.
Chapter 3. Jerrik. I woke up with a low pounding in my head, a familiar one. Not quite a hangover, but close. I shifted and realized I must have passed out in my clothes, on top of the covers. I rolled onto my back, cracked open my eyes and looked down at myself before wincing. All at once, arriving at the retreat came back to me. The second I made it into my room, I refused to go out, only opening the door for my luggage and for the sake of meals. I had thankfully been allowed to pack for myself, and I'd packed plenty to keep me busy along with my clothes. I was still in the tank top and jeans from 2 days ago, and I grimaced. I could have done with a shower, but instead, I slid off the bed and squinted my eyes around the room until I found what I was looking for, which was a half-empty open bottle of whiskey on the floor a few steps away. If I drank it before the hangover set in, I wouldn't have to deal with it. I'd gotten pretty good at avoiding hangovers in the past several months, though the binge drinking was probably hell on my liver. A knock on the door brought a scowl to my face. The staff had come before to try and get me to come out, and every time I gave the same answer, but they kept coming back. "Excuse me, sir, but I'm afraid you're going to have to leave," a voice called, making me roll my eyes. "You've missed your sessions the past 2 days already, you can't miss the third day." "I'm busy," I shouted back. "So just
censored
off and leave me alone. I paid for it, so what's your problem?" It was the staff's job to check in on me, I knew that. No matter how much I insulted them, someone was always back to get me. But no one told me about these sessions, or that they were mandatory. After all, this had been the compromise to locking me up in a rehab center, because I didn't need rehab, no way. I just had a bit of a problem. I wasn't an alcoholic or anything, so I was fed up of everyone treating me as if I were one. Instead, the label and Tom thought I needed to relax. I could have told them it was pointless. I expected to be left alone. They hadn't tried too hard before, but another round of knocking came, this time louder, faster, and decidedly annoying. "Sir," the voice came again, sounding stern. "I'm going to have to ask you to open the door, please. You are required at today's session. If you would only attend even for a few minutes, you would see it's not that bad." I snorted, and thought I heard a touch of desperation in his voice. So I ignored it. Just because I was stuck here, didn't mean I was going to do what they all wanted me to do. Tom, the label, all the people that worked at the retreat, they could go F themselves and leave me alone. It was really all I needed. Bastards. I might not want my career to be over, but it wasn't like I would be out on the streets if it did. I knew I got out of control sometimes, I couldn't help it. But so what? It was my life to live as I pleased. No other label might sign me, but I knew if I hired the right people, I could go solo if I wanted. Only, I didn't want to. It was too much like work. So I was stuck. I moved back to the bed and sat down heavily, taking another heavy gulp of alcohol. "If you don't come out of this room today and join the session, I'm afraid I will have to contact your agent." That made me freeze. And really, I should have known. Quickly, I set the bottle down and got up, walking straight for the door. I hadn't drunk enough to start up a buzz yet, though my head didn't hurt at all anymore. Speed walking across the room made me feel a little nauseous, but I ignored it as I yanked the door open and glared at the worker that stood there. He looked startled when I abruptly opened the door, his eyes widening and lips parting before he tried to look nonchalant, a feat he wasn't really managing. "What did you just say?" I said slowly and saw the man gulp. "It was a requirement of you staying here, set by your agent and your employer." I smiled, and the guy swallowed again, looking almost afraid. I wondered if everyone knew who I was, and who I worked for, and the reason why I was there in the first place. Obviously, both Tom and the label would have tried to keep some things under wraps, but there were leaks and rumors got around. "I didn't know about this," I said. "Why wasn't I informed that you're all supposed to be keeping tabs on me?" I only know what I was told. That you're supposed to attend the sessions, and if you miss too many, he is to be called immediately." I wanted to curse but held myself back. Really, I should have expected it. Like it would all be so easy, they leave me alone and I do whatever I want. Right? You don't need to call anyone. Just point me to where I'm supposed to go, and I'll get ready now. He cleared his throat. "Actually, I'll wait for you here and just take you." I sighed heavily, but yeah, that wasn't a surprise either. I glowered at the man, and he flinched again, but he had better control of his expression this time. "Fine," I muttered and closed the door in his face, then turned back to the room. My nose wrinkled in more disgust as I took it in, even though it was my fault. Gross. Bottles and cans of beer were left on almost every flat, horizontal surface in the room. I'd gone through that stash before I started on the whiskey. I still had 2 more bottles, though at the rate I was going, I wondered how long it would all last. Probably not that long. Along with that, ashes and cigarette.
Censored.
Some barely burned, others burned to the
Censored.
littered the table. Some were left in the empty bottles, probably some of the cans too. I didn't remember making all that mess, but I'd been too preoccupied with drinking and smoking to pay much attention. I should probably clean the place up, but this wasn't my freaking problem. They were paid to clean up. I didn't even want to know the price tag on the room, but there was no doubt that it was a lot more than a hotel suite. I didn't know if the retreat worked like a regular hotel, but then again, I didn't care. I ignored the mess and headed into the bathroom. I went to take a quick shower and to change into something different, a tight short-sleeve t-shirt and a pair of cotton pants. 10 minutes later, I was back at the door and opening it. As much as I didn't like following orders and getting pushed around, I didn't want to get myself into any more trouble either. The guy was still there waiting for me, and he led me silently. "Can I ask just what this session is?" I asked after a few minutes of silence. He started, then turned a confused look my way. Sir. This is a yoga retreat. You'll be going to a yoga class session," he said matter-of-factly. I cursed under my breath, changing my mind and wanting to turn back. But before I could turn to leave, the guy stopped and sent me a polite smile. He was probably cursing at me behind that look though. "The practitioner overseeing your session will be here soon. Please wait for them." He was gone before I could voice a word of protest, and I looked around with a growl. The room was large and sparsely furnished, the walls in a dark cream color with wood flooring. There were 2 sets of large windows that let plenty of sunlight into the room. A few stools set around the room held potted flowers and statues, some mats were rolled up and set against the wall, but that was it. Damn, I growled to myself. Why was I attending a yoga session of all things? I mean, apparently it was a yoga retreat, but still, I didn't do yoga. All that finding your inner peace shit didn't appeal to me, or I would have tried that shit on my own. But then if I didn't try, I was pretty sure I'd get hell for it from Tom, and I was sick of him nagging me. I looked around when no one followed me immediately, tempted to just leave and hide back in my room. So what if they told on me to Tom and my employer? But then my thoughts stalled when I saw someone walk in the room. It was Sharon, and suddenly, this didn't feel all that bad. She was technically part of the staff, but I wondered if they attended classes too. "Fancy seeing you here." Her eyebrows shot up as she slowly walked over to me. "Shouldn't that be my line? You know classes are daily, right? Though I think your schedule is a little different. You have a few off days." I scowled. "I haven't seen anything like a schedule, so I don't know what you mean." She waved a dismissive hand at me. "Your agent must have given it to you, because he was pretty particular about you meeting your schedule. I met him after I left you when he dropped off your bags, and he told me about it." Well, I couldn't say it was impossible. I did a lot of not listening when it came to Tom, and I just couldn't be bothered. "I don't want to be here," I said bluntly. "I think this is all a waste of time I could have used for something else, like writing more songs." The look she sent me was one full of sympathy, and I felt my own expression turn to stone. I had the sudden urge to run, but I had a feeling she wouldn't let me. "Sharon," I said urgently, only for her to cut me off, raising a hand to stop the flow of words that wanted to come out. "I don't need any explanation from you, Jarek. You've been a terror to the staff the past couple of days, you know that? And when they finally got you out, the poor people that had the job of looking after your room were practically in despair." I pursed my lips, feeling a little guilty. I could have picked up after myself. But then I pushed it away and leveled a frown at Sharon. It was their job, wasn't it? They were getting paid for it. "Did you want something, Sharon?" I asked, wondering why she chose today to search me out. Because she heard I finally left my room? Of all the people that had been sent to try and draw me out, I hadn't heard her once. She had wanted to avoid me, after all. So just what was she doing? But the next words to come out of her mouth had me feeling cold. "You may not realize it, but just trust me, Jarek. The pain you're feeling, I understand. Not entirely, but I know you're not okay, and we're here to help you, all of us. But if that's too much for you, I'll do it. That's my job."
Chapter 4. Sharon. What was I thinking? I didn't let my inner voice stop me. I stared at Jarek, who was looking at me blankly, and I wondered why I had bothered to come here at all. I'd heard, of course, from my fellow staff members, of the kind of terror Jarek was being. I'd come to his scheduled session, hoping the threat of his agent would bring him out, and instead of walking away quietly when I saw he was at least trying to behave, I let him see me and even approached him. And told him things that I probably shouldn't have. I was getting too involved when all I wanted to do was avoid him like the plague, not get up close and personal with him. "I don't believe you, Sharon," Jarek said while narrowing his eyes, as if he was trying to see through me. I scowled right back at him, second-guessing myself. Why had I wanted to offer this man comfort? He didn't want it, no matter how badly he needed it. It was true that I understood his pain, to a certain extent. I didn't have a long line of family members, but that didn't mean that I didn't know what it was like in our small town. I had been the subject of gossip during high school, and even after we'd left, that didn't stop them talking. "You can believe what you want, Jarek. Someone will be here to help you with your session. You're a little early," I said nervously. "So you'll have to wait. I just wanted to let you know." Well, not quite. I had my motives, even though I was confused as to what they were. Also, no one had thought he would just come out. The sessions were part of the package at the retreat for everyone. They were never forced. Jarek apparently needed to go through them, but no one would outright force him to do it, but we did have to insist. His manager had made it an obligation. I did not need his instructor to find me there when they arrived, so I needed to leave. I wanted to, so I turned to walk away, but then his voice stopped me. "Leaving so soon, Sharon? But I've wanted to talk to you since we first met." I turned to give him a light scowl. "You have more important things to think about than talking to me, Jarek. Isn't that why you're here?" I said with a sarcastic tone, so that he would leave me alone. He scowled for a moment, before willing it away and replacing it with a smile. I was hoping you'd thought about our last talk and came here to give me an answer. My mind had blanked before I realized what he was talking about, and I knew that I had to get out of here as quick as possible. The conversation was going in his favor, and I didn't like it. You might be a big name now, but that means nothing to me. I work here and you're a client, so I wouldn't even think about giving you a back rub. My protests didn't seem to bother him, because his smile grew wider. He started closing in on the space between us. I saw what he was doing, but I stood right where I was. You don't expect me to think you just came out here as part of your job, do you? You didn't have to approach me at all. In fact, after our last conversation, I was pretty sure you would be keeping away from me. And I should have, I retorted, my voice sharp. I don't intend to stay here in any case. I have work to do elsewhere. But won't you at least keep me company for a few minutes? I've been so lonely here with no one to talk to. Just humor me for a little bit. If his eyes weren't hooded in,
censored,
and roving all over my body, I might have felt a little sorry for him. As it was, I was pretty sure the last thing on his mind was talking. But even knowing that, even as he drew even nearer to me, I couldn't turn away from him. The same thing that made me freeze the last time he backed me up against a wall, kept me where I was, my heart starting to pound a little faster in my
censored.
You came here for one reason only, Sharon, he murmured, and the way he said my name had a shiver running through my body. I refused to think too much of it, but he continued, Do you want to know what that reason is? No. It was what I wanted to say, what I intended to, but when I opened my mouth no sound came out, and Jarek moved even closer to me. Why wasn't I doing anything? Why did I just stand there and let him advance on me, instead of getting out of there as quickly as possible? You're not talking, so I'll tell you anyway, he said decisively. It's because you want me, Sharon. Plain and simple. And guess what? I'm interested in you too. That stilled my distressing thoughts, and my eyes widened slightly in my alarm. The look in his eyes on his face looked almost joyful, like he'd just unlocked all my secrets. The words also had me looking him over as well. He looked good, actually better than when I last saw him. His reputedly unhealthy lifestyle didn't show on him at all, though that probably just made it easier to hide. With him so close I could smell some alcohol on his breath, but his eyes were clear and there was a healthy flush to his cheeks. His body looked firm under the tight t-shirt he wore, and when I realized my eyes had dropped to his
censored,
and where my thoughts were moving, I flushed and looked up at his face with a scowl, stumbling a couple of steps back. Jarek looked even happier that I was backing away from him, and that annoyed me a little. Of course not, Jarek, I said derisively with a snort. I'm flattered you think me good enough to take to bed, but no thank you. Considering how you've been the past 2 days, very few people here actually want to be around you. And yet you're here, he pointed out. I jutted out my chin in defiance. Because I decided to come. Because I happen to know you better than anyone else here does, but it was a mistake, I said, my voice cold. Don't worry, I won't bother you next time. I'll be leaving now. But I didn't move to leave, because I kept my eyes on Jarek. He still had that happy look on his face, and a flash of anger made me want to hurt him for it. Of course I wouldn't. Not only because he was a guest and I was an employee, but that was enough. But I didn't want to turn away from him, because I knew he would reach out to stop me again, and I didn't want to feel his touch on me. Then he moved closer, and I felt my body stiffen before I was stumbling back again. I didn't realize he was hurting me until my back hit the wall, and I jumped in surprise. I could have cursed myself because he had tried that trick on me once already, and I still fell for it. Someone will be coming here soon, Jarek, I said in warning. Whatever you're trying to do, please stop it. He just gave me an innocent look. I don't know what you mean, Sharon.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Damn, when was the last time I had a guy make me this hot? It felt like it had been too long. Then it occurred to me that this wasn't just some guy, but Jarek that I was.
Censored.
And I went cold as realization hit me. I froze and pressed my palms against his,
Censored.
even as he continued to
Censored.
me, and I pushed him back. He was bigger than me, stronger, but the shock was enough to have him stumble back. There was a moment where our eyes locked together, and I gasped. His pupils were blown, his eyes dark with
Censored.
and confusion. I could tell, even without him saying it, that he wanted to continue, probably take it back to his room. But I couldn't. "I'll see you later, Jarek," I said quickly as my eyes flitted away. I turned to leave, and that time he didn't stop me. I felt almost disappointed, before shoving that part of me down, feeling annoyed. I should have known better. I should have just stayed away from him. I knew that the attraction was too strong, and that
Censored.
just made it even harder to stay away from him. Holy crap. I was in trouble. Big freaking trouble.
Chapter 5. Jerrik. I woke up earlier than I had the day before, for the first time in a long time, feeling refreshed. Not drinking and smoking had a lot to do with the fact that I felt a lot better now than I had in a long while. My room had been cleaned, so it looked like that part of my trip had been erased. I rested last night, and it had been like a dream come true. Having Sharon in my bed would have made it even better. I thought back to our
Censored.
and felt my mouth curving into a smile without my permission. But I couldn't help myself. I'd gotten close, and she hadn't pushed me away. She'd even been the one to press for the
Censored.
I might have a chance with Sharon, and it wasn't just wishful thinking. There were plenty of other women I could have tried for, not that I'd looked for any of them, besides the group I saw the day I arrived, but I wanted her more than I'd wanted any other woman. Something about her was different. The familiarity between us should have scared me off, even though we hadn't known each other that well before. But besides her not being a stranger, I was starting to learn a little about her personality, and I found I liked it. I wondered just how much of her had changed and why she'd left home. One thing was for sure though, she'd only grown even more appealing since I saw her last. After the
Censored.
we shared, there was no shred of doubt in my mind. Whether she knew it or not, whether she admitted it or not, Sharon wanted me. I was going to let her have me. It won't be that simple, my mind reminded me, determined to kill my fun. Sure, she had pushed me away at the end, but it didn't change that she had
Censored.
me back and so hot, like she wanted more than just that.
Censored.
Feeling more than ready to face the day, I rolled off my bed and reached for my phone on the nightstand. Breakfast would be soon, and I was feeling a little hungry. I wanted to get showered and dressed, and head out of my room to look for Sharon. I was going to practice good behavior. I was going to try hard to be at my best, and hopefully, I could get her to at least talk to me, because I had a feeling after yesterday she was going to try to avoid me again. But maybe if I weren't causing trouble like she'd accused me of yesterday, she'd give something happening between us a chance. A knock on my door had me heading for it, and as opposed to yesterday, my demeanor was pretty mild. Someone different was there this time, a woman. She was attractive, but not nearly enough for me to try to seduce her when I had my eyes set on someone else, no matter how reluctant she was acting. "Can I help you?" I asked blandly. She was startled, eyes widening, and I almost laughed because her reaction was a lot like the guy from yesterday, skittish, even though I hadn't done or said anything wrong yet. I just came to inform you that it's time for breakfast and the meal has already been served," she said, voice rushed. "If you'd rather not eat with the other guests, food can be brought to you." I gave her a smile, just something small, but I kept it impersonal. "Thank you for informing me," I said politely. "I'll be coming down shortly." She nodded jokingly, covering up her surprise, then she turned and walked away quickly. Once she was gone, I headed back inside to grab a quick shower and change clothes, this time pulling on another tank top that stretched over my
Censored.
and a pair of track pants. Sharon was stuck in my head, and the second I stepped out of my room, I was looking around for her. Her pushing me away still irked a bit, but I wouldn't give her the chance to run away next time. She had to know we'd be good together. That
Censored.
was more than enough proof. And if I had to, if it would make her not run, I was going to show her that she wanted me. I didn't even care for her reasons, because she was attracted to my body, because she knew me and I knew her, or she was a distraction and needed a little fun herself, because I intended to have her. But I couldn't see her anywhere. I took a quick walk after breakfast, before heading for another of my scheduled sessions. I went through the whole thing distracted, and I could sense the trainer's annoyance with me, but I didn't give a damn. My good mood from earlier was slowly dying. I did see someone familiar, the guy that came and got me yesterday, and I wondered if he knew where I could find Sharon. Before I could think it over, I was hurrying over to him, reaching my hand out to grasp his shoulder so he would stop. He did, turning around with a surprised look which turned a little sour before he plastered on a careful smile. Well, I remembered cursing him out when he came to my door, so I couldn't exactly blame him for disliking me. "What can I do for you, sir?" His voice wasn't exactly welcoming, and I scowled. "Well, F you too. I'm looking for a member of your staff. Her name is Sharon. She was at reception when I arrived a few days ago. Do you know where she could be?" He blinked, clearly surprised by my line of questioning. I'm not sure actually. What do you need her for?" I ignored that stupid question. "I wanted to talk to her, that's all. If you see her, just let her know that Jarek is looking for her. She knows where my room is." "Thank you," I added reluctantly, and turned away before I could see what look would be on his face. I frowned to myself as I made my way back to my room, hoping she would come after me there. But would she? When she was seemingly doing her best to avoid me? Maybe she was just busy somewhere, or we'd walk past each other without me noticing, but something told me she was going out of her way not to encounter me. Just in case, I took the long way back to my room, passing by reception to see if she was there. I was tempted to check all over the place before deciding not to, and I headed back to my room. I was hopeful that guy would come across her and let her know, and she would come and see me. So I waited. I couldn't freaking believe it. I started to pace the room. I couldn't sit here and just wait, could I? So I pulled out the unfinished whiskey and drank like a fish.
Chapter 6. Sharon. What are we supposed to do with this guy? I hummed, breaking out of my reverie to look at Samantha, a coworker and someone I called a friend. We were both stuck at reception, though it was the middle of the day and no one had come so far. Only one of us needed to be there when it was so slow, and it didn't have to be me, but the reception was far from where Jarek was staying, and I needed the space from him. "Haven't you been listening?" she said, frowning at me when she noticed my confused expression. I gave her a sheepish smile. I'm sorry. I've been thinking about some stuff, and it's had me a bit preoccupied." "I'm sorry." Her eyebrows arched. "Is it a problem I can help you with? I don't mind lending a hand, you know." My smile was easier this time, more comfortable. Samantha didn't know much about my background. As much as I liked her, I just couldn't risk letting her in the know. But the little I did talk to her about made me feel better. She was the one to tell me the rumors about Jarek coming to the retreat. "I know, and thanks," I said gratefully. "But it's fine. I should put it out of my mind anyway." There was no point in thinking too much about Jarek after all. He was just a guest at the retreat. A few weeks and he would be gone. "So what were you talking about before?" I asked quickly, partly to divert her attention, but also because I did feel bad about not listening to her. "I was talking about that guy that came here almost a week ago. He's someone famous, right? He's such an ass to everybody. I swear they're ready to boot him out of camp. Or well, the retreat." I froze where I was leaning against the counter, then slowly moved until I was standing straight. "I thought he started going to his sessions though," I muttered numbly. Samantha shrugged. "Well, he did for a couple of days, and I don't know what happened between yesterday and this morning, but he's sure as hell grumpy. I don't know what he's so mad about, but he's a special client, you know? So we're supposed to take care of him, only none of the staff can stand him right now, so. Shit. That was probably my fault, and now I regretted going to see him at all. I'd thought about
Censored.
Yes, but I still thought it shouldn't have happened. Hell, part of my contract included policies against fraternizing with clients. Not that it didn't happen, but as long as you didn't go around advertising it and no harm came of it, you were in the clear. But it wasn't like I wanted to have anything to do with him, right? Even after that.
Censored.
How many times did someone get sent to his room? I don't know, several. But he missed his session anyway, and everyone is booked for the rest of the day. She shrugged. Let's hope for better tomorrow. Why do I think that's hopeless? The next day, I got up early, even though it was my day off. I didn't think I could have gone back to sleep and rested. My mind kept going back to Jarek and what had happened between us since he arrived. Yeah, he was, in a low-key way, ruining my life, but he was probably forced to come here to stop him from ruining his own life. And it wasn't like I hated him, so I planned to go and see him, and at least try to get him to go for his session today. I showered and dressed in casual clothes, pulling on a sundress over my undies because of the heat, and heading out to get something to eat. When I couldn't hold myself back anymore, I left to go looking for Jarek. It was too early for him to have a session scheduled, but I didn't want anyone seeing me there anyway. When I got to his door, I paused to take in a deep breath, then knocked. It's me, Sharon, I called out as an afterthought before he started to curse me out. I waited for a few moments, wondering if he was still asleep. I thought to leave and come back later if I could, but just when I turned away, the door opened and the man himself stood there. He looked terrible. There were dark bags under his eyes which were red, his clothes looked like he'd slept in them, and there was a very obvious stain on the tank top he was wearing. Even worse was the smell, like he'd doused himself in alcohol. Jarek, I said, breathless with shock. What the hell happened to you? I thought it was pretty apt, because it looked like he'd immersed himself in his hell. Somehow, I didn't think just my avoiding him could have caused all this. Hey Sharon, he said, almost sounding disinterested, ignoring my question. He frowned slightly. Where were you the past couple days? I squirmed a little, not wanting to admit that I'd tried to hide from him. Though I hadn't exactly been trying yesterday. I do work here, Jarek. It's not like I'm a guest and can come and go as I please, I said, my voice low, apologetic. I'm sorry I couldn't come to meet you before. He sighed and moved to lean against the door jamb, folding his arms across his.
Censored.
As his frown deepened. So what are you doing here now, Sharon? There was an edge of sarcasm to his tone, and I decided to ignore that, as he'd ignored me. Instead, I took a step closer to him and noticed him tense, though he looked like he was trying too hard to pretend nonchalance. Jarek, what's wrong? We stood there, staring at each other silently for a while. Neither of us spoke, and I refused to be the first one to cave. Lucky for me, he relaxed his stance and sighed, his eyes sliding away before he met my gaze again, the bleakness in his eyes enough to make my heart.
Censored.
Sorry, he said slowly, and I was surprised he even bothered to apologize. It's just the date isn't good for me. If you're here to tell me I have to go somewhere, can you please just leave me alone? I frowned. What's wrong with the date? He looked away again and took a deep breath. I also thought his eyes looked suspiciously shiny before he blinked and turned back to me, composed. It's the anniversary of my mom's death, Sharon. You have to understand why I'd rather be alone for a few days, right? Oh. I felt guilt stab at my
Censored.
and wanted to smack myself. Yeah, I knew about his family, I just didn't pay attention to the date. It happened after I left, but we came from a pretty small town, someone heard and let me know. But I couldn't just leave him now, knowing what day it was. Would you like to do something with me today? I asked abruptly. He frowned. Like what? He asked, wary. I'm not working on the clock right now, and I'm sure you don't have anyone else who knows about your mom, right? Silence met my question, and it was a good enough answer. No wonder he was going through a rough patch. He was trying to do everything alone. I wondered if it was just how his lifestyle was, or if he didn't think he could trust the people around him with the real Jarek. I thought we could light a candle together, for your mom. Would you mind? If he didn't want to go, I wouldn't force him, of course. He was still for a few moments, considering me before he slowly nodded. Fine, he murmured. I just need to shower and change. Can you wait for me here a bit, or would you like to come in? I hesitated, before slowly shaking my head. No, I think it would be best if I just waited for you. Would 20 minutes be enough for you? I need to do something, and then I'll be right back. All right, he said simply. I'd expected an argument. He went back inside, and I turned and rushed back to my room. I had an idea of where I wanted us to go for the day, and hopefully he would like it. I rummaged through my things, hoping I had candles. I could always buy some, but it would require a detour. I took a few more things, made sure I had my purse with my phone and cash in it. We'd have to get something to eat outside the retreat, because I wasn't waiting around for breakfast. With a shawl pulled over my shoulders and everything else packed in my bag, I went back to meet him. I ended up back at his door, to find him waiting for me. I gave him a small smile, and waved with my hand for him to follow me. Come on. I have a car. Are we allowed to leave here anyway? I never asked. I shot him a look. It's not a prison, you know. Of course, you're allowed to leave. I don't always spend my days off here, you know. And where exactly are we going? I'm taking you to the coast. It's a bit of a drive, but it would be perfect if you'd like some alone time. It's a great spot, but unless it's summer, it's empty most days. He looked at me, curious. It's not that cold now, though. I shrugged. It's not, but people are too busy to be hanging out on the beach, I guess. I go there all the time, and I've only come across other people maybe 3 times. We made it to my car and got in, and I threw my stuff in the back before I turned on the car and started the long drive. I turned on the radio, keeping the volume reasonable but not inviting conversation. He wasn't in the mood to talk anyway, so it worked out just fine for the both of us. The silence wasn't uncomfortable though, quite the opposite. I naturally loved silence, and he seemed lost in his thoughts. He was probably thinking about home and his family, and my heart went out to him. When we were close enough, I found somewhere to park, then got out of the car with my things and waited for Jarek to do the same. Can I take off my shoes? I pursed my lips but nodded. I glanced at his feet and noticed he was wearing boots. It would be annoying if sand got in them. You can if you want. Sorry, I should have told you we were coming to the beach. It's fine. He leaned against the car as he pulled off his boots, then socks, and left both in the car. I was wearing flip-flops, so I was fine. I locked the door, and we walked the short distance to the beach. I felt a breeze go through my hair and sighed. Do you still want to light a candle? I don't think we can with this breeze. And after I'd bothered to bring the damn candle and lighter along. He sent me a small smile. It's fine, it doesn't have to be a candle. He glanced down with a slight wince before crouching down. I watched, surprised, as he picked up a clump of sandy mud between his hands. This will be more than enough for me. I arched an eyebrow at him. Mud, Jarek? Really? He grinned. Yeah, I'm gonna throw it in the sea. It doesn't have to make sense, but it's what I want to do. Is that okay? I wrinkled my nose at the thought of touching mud, but I crouched down to get some of my own. I grimaced at the feeling of it getting under my nails, but we headed for the water. I looked to him for direction as we stopped at the edge of the water. He pressed the mud into a ball, reared back and threw it into the water. I was impressed by how far it got. I still had no idea what we were doing, but I set down my bag a little back on the sand where it wasn't wet and threw the mud in my hands. The distance it cleared wasn't even half of his, and I scowled at him as he laughed. I took off my flip-flops and walked a little into the water, before crouching down, being careful not to get the edge of my dress wet, and washed my hands in the salty water, removing the mud under my nails. Jarek did the same before we moved back to the beach and just stood watching the water, the silence between us again comfortable. "I hope this at least makes you feel better," I said after a while, turning to look at him. He hummed, looking off into the horizon, before turning to me with a small smile. "It does," he said earnestly. "You have no idea just how much. Just by throwing mud into the sea." I joked. "It's more than that. It would take too long to explain, but you could say that it liberated me in its way. Thanks, Sharon, for bringing me here." The smile he leveled at me was the most genuine I'd seen from him so far. I couldn't look away. A minute passed, and the smile fell from his face, but he didn't look away either. Instead, he stepped closer to me and raised one of his hands to my cheek. I knew it was coming. I could have seen it from a mile away, but I couldn't and didn't want to move as he leaned down to
Censored.
me.
Chapter 7. Jerrik. I pressed my lips against Sharon's in a soft,
Censored.
not wanting to push her too far too quickly, so she would run again. After the moment we just shared, I didn't want to ruin the good mood she'd worked to keep me in. She didn't have to, and I appreciated her going out of her way to keep me company on her day off. My lips brushed softly against hers, moving just slightly. She was a little tense, and I could tell she was trying to hold herself back. But then she sighed, and her whole body seemed to melt. My hands moved from where they held her by the shoulders to slide around her waist and hold her body to mine. I broke the
Censored.
and pulled back so I could see her face. "You're beautiful, Sharon," I murmured without thinking, and it was true. It had gotten a bit late. The sun was getting ready to set, dyeing the day in soft amber and gold, and the color reflected perfectly on her. It brought out highlights in her light brown hair and made her green eyes almost seem to glow. "You don't need to try to flatter me, you know," she said, sarcastic even as a pleased flush and a small smile told me she appreciated the compliment. "You probably meet a lot of pretty and beautiful people. I mean, you are famous, Jarek." I shrugged lightly, one of my hands trailing slowly up her back. I felt satisfaction curl in my
Censored.
when she shivered slightly and squirmed even closer to me. I wanted to
Censored.
her some more, but there was something I needed to let her know first. "Trust me, Sharon, when I say you're the most beautiful person I've seen in years now." "What, you don't like your life of fame?" she said with an eyebrow arched, a stray beam from the sinking sun gleaming off of her hair. I smiled because she got what I was trying to say. "I'm saying that in the search for fame, you meet all kinds of people. Plenty of them look good on the outside, but no, it's not such a rosy picture. Don't get me wrong, there are some genuinely good people, but I can't stand most of the people that approach me." She tilted her head to the side curiously, and I held back a sigh when the light from the setting sun washed over her face and made it glow. Even if I wasn't just comparing personalities, Sharon was a good woman inside and out. "According to the rumors, you're never out on your own though." Freaking press. There wasn't anything that they didn't print, or even worse, posted on YouTube. There was no privacy these days. Everyone said that things were better with the access of data, but I didn't think it was a blessing. It was a sin. Everyone and anyone was happy to post anything on social media, regardless of the consequences of that action. I can't say any of them are my friends. The only constant in my life is, actually, Tom and my label. My lips tightened a little bit. If I had to be honest with myself, not wanting to lose what little stability I still had with both was the real reason I'd agreed to make this retreat in the first place. "But let's put all that aside," I said before she could ask more. "It's just you and me here right now, and I'd like to focus on that." When she didn't voice any objections, I leaned down to her again. This time I added a little more pressure, moved my lips against hers a little rougher than before. Sharon moaned a little, and pressed her body closer to mine. I took that to mean she liked what I was doing, so I didn't stop. Instead, I took it a little further, parting my lips to brush my
censored
against her lower lip. Then I took her lip in between mine, and lightly nibbled on it, catching it between my teeth and tugging on it a little. Sharon groaned and finally parted her lips. I took advantage of it, sliding my
censored
between hers to map out the inside of her mouth, roll my
censored
against hers. Slowly but surely, the was growing in intensity, until there was nothing soft about it left. Sharon had her palms pressed against my
censored
and she slid them up to my shoulders, then around my neck, as she held onto me tightly and me back, just as ravenous as I was. We parted when we both needed to breathe, but even then we didn't go far from each other. We panted for breath, breathing in each other's air with how close we were, but neither of us chose to move. "We really shouldn't do this," she said in a whisper, even as her arms tightened around my neck. "Why is that?" I asked with a quirk of my eyebrow, my fingers stroking down from her shoulder to her elbow until she shivered. "You want this just as much as I do, Sharon." I went back in for another just to prove my point, and she me back hard, pressing her body even closer to mine. When we parted again and she spoke, she seemed even more reluctant to let the words leave her mouth. "It's not that I don't want this, Jarek, but my job." Her whole body shook as I stroked a finger down the point her hard
censored
made in her dress. I looked at her, waiting for her to continue, as she tried to regain her composure. I could almost feel just how dirty my grin was. "Work," she strangled out, but then stopped again, her breath shaking from her
censored
as my fingers clamped over the bud. Right. I hadn't forgotten her job, but I didn't think about it much either. I wondered if they had rules against sleeping with clients. Maybe I would look into it later, but if that was her only objection, then I intended to get my way. "If that's your only problem, then don't think about it." I leaned down to nip lightly at her neck, and she moaned as she tipped her head back to give me more access. "Besides, it's your day off, remember? And we're off grounds." "Jarek," she whispered, her eyes on my lips, hungry for more. I thought she was going to try and make up some more excuses, but she just said my name, her voice all breathless, making my body grow even hotter. I growled against her neck, licking a broad stripe from the hollow beneath her throat and up to her chin, before reaching up with one of my hands, so I had a light grip on her hair. I tilted her head just the way I wanted, and pressed our lips together in another harsh. "I need this right now, Sharon," I groaned against her softness, barely pulling away from the to talk. "Please tell me you want this too." There was a moment where she froze, and I froze along with her. I had a moment to wonder if I had gone too far. She pulled away from me, and I wanted to curse.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Chapter 8. Sharon. I stopped the car and looked over at Jarek, sleeping in the seat beside me. I stroked my bottom lip as I regarded him, thinking back to our time on the beach. I couldn't exactly deny that I had enjoyed it. I'd been pretty vocal about it. But now, I regretted it. It had been an in-the-moment kind of thing, but now that I'd gone through with it, I wished it hadn't happened. With a sigh, I reached over to shake Jarek awake. "Hey, you need to get up. We're back, and we need to head out now if you'd like to eat before you go to sleep." All we'd had the whole day were some of the snacks I'd thought to bring with me, and it wouldn't be enough for either of us, though I didn't feel like I could eat. Jarek had grumbled a little before he stirred, and his eyes blinked open. "Already?" he muttered, rubbing his eye with a closed fist. I refused to think it was cute. "Yeah. We're lucky that we're not late." "What, do they lock up at a specific time? Like there's curfew or something?" I scoffed. "Of course not. There's plenty to do at night, just like there is during the day." Then I sighed. "But past a certain time, people would have noticed, and we're trying to avoid that, remember?" There was no answer from him, and I tried to ignore the nervous churning in my stomach. "Come on, big guy," I said with a little more force. "Out of the car." I followed my command and pushed open my door so I could step outside. I shivered a little. Though it was still a little warm, the night would grow colder. I hadn't put the shawl back over my shoulders. It was in the back seat with the rest of my stuff, and I intended to throw it in a washer for a few rounds before I ever used it again. We'd gotten it dirty, and with more than just sand. My body.
Censored.
A little, but it was the good kind of.
Censored.
That meant I'd had a good time. No matter what I felt about what we'd done, I couldn't say I didn't enjoy it. I waited for Jarek's door to open before I went to the back door and opened it to get to my things. A touch on my back startled me, and I gave a slight yelp. Jarek laughed at me, and I frowned as I pulled out to turn and face him. "Why would you do that?" "I could have hurt myself, you idiot," I scolded. He just kept snickering. "Nah, I was right there. I would have stopped you before you hit your head." I wanted to retort and tell him he couldn't possibly have, but the words caught in my throat. I felt something suspiciously like warmth spread in my
Censored.
because of what he'd said. But in the next second, I mentally shook it off. I couldn't let him sweet-talk me. "Why don't you head back to your room?" I suggested, more than ready to be alone. "Or go get something to eat. I'm sure you must be hungry." Jarek didn't move to leave though. His expression did change from amused to hungry, but when he took a step closer to me, I knew it wasn't the kind of hunger I was talking about. He looked like he wanted to ravish me, even though he'd thoroughly effed me not that long ago, and my body quivered at the need to feel his touch again. Only there was no way I was letting that happen a second time. "Jarek, I think you..." "Forget about that," he said, cutting me off. "Why don't you come back to my room with me, and we can continue where we left off?" He put his hands on the car on either side of me, trapping me as he moved even closer. There was a part of me that wanted more, but there was a bigger part that was realizing just how big a mistake I'd made. "I don't think we should do this, Jarek," I said quickly, placing my palms on his
Censored.
to hold him back. "I'm off the clock, but we're back now." He just scoffed. "Oh, come on. You had a good time on the beach, didn't you? I swear it could be so much better. I'll make you feel even better." I tightened my lips in frustration because he wasn't even listening to me. "We can't do anything here, Jarek," I told him firmly. "We shouldn't have done anything at all. I'm serious. I could lose my job, and I don't have anywhere to go if that happens." He frowned, but he still wasn't moving away. "Are you in some money trouble or something?" I rolled my eyes, darkly amused. "We don't all get to catch big breaks, Jarek. I have to work to earn everything I get, remember? If I'm out of a job, I don't get a roof over my head or food to eat every day. Now please just back off." But he just shrugged, looking unconcerned. "Whatever. I have more than enough money if that's what you need. Or I could find you a job." I arched an eyebrow. "Could you really, Jarek?" "Yeah, but it's not even necessary. I'm seriously loaded, Sharon. You'll get more money than you could ever dream of. Just come back to my room with me." I wrinkled my nose and wondered if he even realized what he just implied about me. I wondered if I should be offended. And I wondered how he didn't seem to understand that it wasn't just the risk of losing my income. I loved my job at the retreat. Yeah, there was occasional dealing with impossible clients, but never so bad that I would wish to quit. I couldn't afford to stay at the retreat as a guest, but working there had its perks. "Look, Jarek," I said carefully, my hands on his
Censored.
pushing him back so he wasn't crowding me. "What happened at the beach was great. But we can't do it here, and I am not budging on this. I know you're loaded, you don't need to tell me, but I've been looking after myself just fine." I ignored the slight frown on his face as I reached inside and quickly grabbed my stuff, then closed the door and locked the car. "When can I see you again then?" I sighed. "I work from tomorrow, so I don't know. But if I get time, I'll stop by. You should head back to your room now, and don't forget to get something to eat." I turned my back to him and walked away, biting my lip. I felt a little guilty for blowing him off after what we did not that long ago. But it wasn't just me having second thoughts. At the beach, we had both been away from our problems. It was liberating for both of us, and I let that go to my head. I let Jarek, the atmosphere, and the freedom to do as we pleased seduce me, and I would have to face the consequences. Only, I didn't want to. I'd had my job at the retreat long before Jarek arrived, and I wanted to be there long after he left in a few weeks. So of course the logical thing would be to forget about Jarek, but even knowing I needed to, I didn't want that either. So what was I going to do?
Chapter 9. Jerrik. The day after Sharon took me to the beach, I waited for her to come to my room. I didn't know if I had anything scheduled that day. Then again, I didn't care. I expected Sharon to be the one to get me since I knew she would be working. Only when the knock on my door came, and I went to open it almost eagerly, it wasn't the person I most wanted to be there. Instead, I met another staff member, one I vaguely remembered from a few days back. "Sir, it's time for breakfast," he said politely. I didn't let myself get annoyed, even though they were checking on me for my meals now like they were babysitting me. The thought would have angered me, but I had something more important on my mind. I even looked around him, but I didn't see Sharon anywhere. My good mood suddenly vanished, and the guy flinched when I turned to glare on him. "No thank you. You can go back." He didn't immediately back off, like most of the people that had come here did. "I'm sorry, sir, but you really shouldn't be skipping your meals. I was told you didn't attend breakfast yesterday, so at least try to do so today before your session." I winced when he reminded me of my scheduled sessions. I didn't want to play nice and just attend, if Sharon was going to do what she did before and ignore me because of yesterday. "Look," I said slowly, trying to rein in my temper, "I ate dinner last night and I had plenty, so I'm good for now. I'll come to breakfast when I damn well feel like it." That pretty much meant I wouldn't be going, but he didn't need to know that. Instead, I slammed the door in his face and was grateful when he didn't bother me again and just left instead. I moved back to the bed and lay back on it, feeling something cold take root in my
Censored.
After yesterday, I would have thought Sharon and I had grown even a little closer. Or was it just me? We'd had fun together at the beach, and everything had been fine on the way back. I fell asleep on the way, and woke up when we got back. She'd been reserved, but I thought that was just her getting back to her place of work and wanting to be cautious. Surely she wouldn't just avoid me now, even after everything, would she? Damn it. I cursed under my breath, my eyes sliding closed as I threw my arm over my eyes. "What the F are you doing to me, Sharon?" I was fairly sure that she would still try to avoid me, and the thought hurt a lot more than I cared to admit. Letting anyone have that much power over me was dangerous, but I just couldn't help it with her. Some time later, when I had almost fallen asleep, there was another knock on the door. I bolted upright, feeling a little disoriented before I jumped out of bed and rushed to the door. I knew better, but I couldn't help but hope that it was her this time. I didn't bother to hide my disappointment when it was someone else that I didn't know. "Sir," the woman said, confused. I waved her off and rearranged my expression, though I was pretty sure it still looked a little sour. "What do you want?" I asked, and I didn't bother to be nice. Her look immediately turned peeved, and I wondered if I'd had this argument with her before already. "You have yoga sessions scheduled for this morning, and another one this evening. I came to let you know to attend today. Someone is already waiting for you." I scowled at her. "What the hell? What do you mean I have 2 sessions today? I only go for one." Her lips pursed. "There are 2 classes, morning and evening, and most clients attend both." She leveled a look at me, like she wondered why I got different treatment. "Your situation is somewhat different, which is why you've only been attending 1 class a day, the morning class. Now please, you're already late." I could have growled, but my ire wasn't directed at her specifically. I already knew the classes were voluntary, but my stupid agent, that bastard, just had to turn the retreat staff into my babysitters, probably because he was tired of doing it himself. Well, I was not in the mood to be cooperative, even at risk of them telling on me. I'm not going to the session. Sorry for wasting your time and having you come all the way here, but please go away, I said, trying my best to be nice. She didn't seem to appreciate it. I'm sorry, but I can't. I glowered at the persistent woman in front of me, wanting her gone. But she didn't look cowed at all. If anything, her determination firmed along with her back as she gave me a glare of her own. Sir, you've missed sessions for the past 2 days. During your stay here, you're supposed to attend most, if not all, your sessions. If you miss more than 2 days, we call your agent. So please let me take you. F that. I suddenly shouted, cutting the woman off. Would you please just stop freaking talking and go away? I don't want to go anywhere, understand that already. You're giving me a headache. She looked surprised, but I didn't know why. Did she think I was going to let her walk all over me, even with that excuse? Yeah, I didn't want my bad behavior coming back to bite me in the ass, but I wasn't thinking rationally just then, so to hell with Tom and the label. But her surprise was short-lived, and she frowned at me in disapproval. Sir, I'm sure there's no need for you to shout, I can hear you just fine. I gave her a look of disbelief. How do I know that? Because clearly you're not listening to me, or what I'm saying. But sir, if you would just come with me. I grit my teeth in annoyance, and couldn't hold back my outburst. I already told you to shut up and go away. I will go for the stupid session when I am damn good and ready. But sir? Unless you intend to drag me there, leave me alone. I already said I'd be going for the session. I wasn't outright shouting, but I wasn't all that quiet either. And then her voice came. Jarek. I turned immediately to the side her voice came from, and I wanted to smack myself for reacting to her so readily. Instead of feeling happy like I would have earlier, seeing her there just made me angrier. What do you want? I snapped at her. She stopped a couple of feet away from me, eyes a little wide in her surprise. I chuckled darkly, feeling a little amused. Of all people, you expect me to listen to you? You know what? Go away. I have shit to do. It was drinking myself to oblivion with my second last bottle of whiskey, but that was none of their business. Sharon hesitated, but stupidly, and maybe a little bravely, she took some steps closer. Look, Jarek, I think you've been told that you need to attend the session. It's not mandatory, but? If it isn't, then I don't see why I have to attend when I don't want to, I countered, raising my eyebrow as my voice went low and tight. Then I pointed at the other woman, who was still standing right there. And can you please tell this officious cow to go away? I am tired of dealing with her, because she seems to have lost her hearing. I already told her no, and she wanted to drag me. I don't care if you people tell Tom, so leave already. Sharon glanced at the other woman, then scowled at me. Jarek, you're making a commotion. You need to be a little calmer, please. Whatever she did or said to make you mad, just let it go, all right. She's just doing her job. I narrowed my eyes at her. And what about you, Sharon, huh? Why are you here? Just doing your job? I said, my voice thick with sarcasm, and sneered at her. Her face flushed as she glared at me. If you want to play it like that, she said, keeping her voice low with difficulty. Yes, I am here to do my job, Jarek. What the hell was yesterday then, huh? I was cruel, and I knew I should shut up and keep my shit to myself, but then the words were spilling out. You know when you drove me down to the beach? We had some fun, and then we effed. What was that? A pity F. She was frozen, and I could see the shock on both women's faces. I was probably just
Censored.
shearing off by airing dirty laundry where I didn't need to, but I didn't care. Are you having fun bossing me around, or do you do this all the time? I continued. Tell me, Sharon, how many other clients have you been with because they were messed up bastards, huh? Who else have you given special care to? I knew I was making a scene. I also knew I was acting like the joker I didn't want to be. But really, it was partly her fault. It felt too much like she was trying to make a fool of me, and I didn't like it. I'd had plenty of that the past several years. I could live without more of it, and especially from the first person I'd opened myself up to. "What is going on here?" came another voice, loud and booming, and we all stopped and faced the new guy. I could tell, just looking at him, that he wasn't just another member of staff. I confirmed it when I noticed Sharon, out the corner of my eye, look at the man with a horrified expression as her face paled. "Yes, sir," she stuttered, and whatever else she would have said must have gotten stuck in her throat. "Sharon, my office right now," the man said, and made a sharp about face, then walked away from all of us. I heard Sharon groan beside me, but before I could get her to stop, she was already up and heading after the man I was pretty sure was her boss.
Chapter 10. Sharon. I stood in front of Henry's desk with my hands clasped in front of me. It wasn't a secret that Henry hated me. Sometimes I felt as if I was the only woman that he hadn't slept with ever since I'd been working here. He called me a snob for not wanting a piece of the guru. I just came here to heal. I didn't work here to have.
Censored.
If I'd wanted that, then I could have easily worked in a strip club. I enjoyed my job here, as long as I didn't have to directly have any contact with him. He was looking over his shoulder, so I wouldn't meet his eyes. I didn't have to look into them to know he was mad. I could feel it rolling off him, and I would have winced, but I was trying to control myself and appear as professional as possible. Lord knows, after what he'd just heard Jarek yell to everyone, he was no doubt unhappy. It felt a little too much like when I was in high school and got called to the principal's office. Only if this man decided my conduct was too improper, I would be out of a job, not suspended from class. "Now, Sharon," he finally said, his voice low and authoritative. "Can you tell me just what I walked in on back there?" I resisted the urge to chew on my lower lip. What exactly could I say to excuse myself? I didn't want to say we knew each other, but... "It was a misunderstanding, sir," I said quietly, and almost immediately bit my cheek. I could tell by the minute of silence afterward that it was the wrong thing to say. "Well, now you do have to explain to me. How was it a misunderstanding?" I winced because I couldn't help it. I met his eyes, then shifted my gaze to back over his shoulder. "Jarek is..." "Oh?" Henry said, and I could see his eyebrows shoot up in shock. "He's one of our special clients, isn't he? I didn't realize the two of you were on a first-name basis." We had special clients that were the ones that came for more than just some relaxation and a vacation. I knew how bad the situation I was in looked, but I had to talk myself out of it somehow. "Well, I guess you could say that, sir. You see, Jarek and I have met before." "Was he your boyfriend before? Is that whatever that was about?" I shook my head to refute the statement. "No, we were never like that. But see, we come from the same town, so we knew each other growing up. I was surprised to see him when he came here, and I've been trying to help him out, especially when I heard he was having problems attending his sessions." As soon as I said the words, I wanted to hit myself. Not only because I was lying, but also because I hadn't helped Jarek much. I felt like such a hypocrite. Every time I approached him, something happened to make me panic and run, even though I went to him of my own free will. If what just happened was any indication, then I wasn't doing a good job of being of help to Jarek. "All right," the boss said slowly, deliberating. "So you knew him before you came here. Explain his outburst to me." My shoulders joked up in a shrug before I could stop the movement, and I was fidgeting in place. So much for acting professional. "I don't know what happened, sir, but I found him already arguing with another member of staff. I attempted to intervene, and that was when he started shouting at me. I just wanted to help him." "Help him with what?" "Jarek." I started, then paused. Would he want me divulging any of his life to someone he didn't know? Probably not, but I didn't need to go into details. It's just some stuff has happened in his life, and I can tell that he's hurting. I just wanted to help him because I've known him for so long. That much was true. I just didn't know how to help him without ruining things in the process. The boss hummed but didn't say anything. When I chanced to glance at his face, I wished I hadn't, my gaze dropping to my feet. He wasn't happy. Of course, I'd anticipated it, but it still had me thinking whether he would ask me to pack up my belongings and leave. I didn't want to go. The air went still and tense as I waited for Henry to say exactly what was on his mind. I knew that it wasn't only to do with Jarek. He was probably upset about Jarek being with me, when I never gave him the opportunity to do the same. While I do understand you're
censored
to try and comfort someone that you know, I don't want to see the same scene that I just walked in on again, Sharon. And you won't. I was desperate to get out of his office. The longer I stayed in there, the longer I felt that my job was on the line. I never intended for things to escalate the way they did. Well, it's good you didn't mean for it to happen, but it doesn't change that it did, he said firmly. I'm going to let you off with a warning this time, Sharon, because you're such a good employee. But if I hear anything, or if you so much as go near that client again, I'm afraid I can't have you working here. You know the rule when it comes to clients, Sharon. You do not have affairs with them. The if you do, you keep it hidden didn't need to be said, but I knew he was thinking along those lines. Henry, you won't have any more problems with me. A part of me was relieved I wasn't going anywhere. But then, there was the part of me that felt disappointed that I wasn't allowed to visit Jarek again, though it should have been a good thing for me. In a way, I'd been looking for a way to get out of seeing him, and this way I could do it with minimal guilt. Because it wasn't just me running away, it was a direct order from Henry. It was almost funny when I thought of my situation being something similar, if watered down, to Jarek's. He was at the retreat because he was forced to, and because of my job, I would be forced not to see him. I knew it was for the best. So why did it leave a bitter taste in my mouth? If that's all, sir, I'll get back to work. You do that, he said dismissively, waving me away. I gave a sharp nod that he didn't see, because he was looking down. Excuse me. When I left his office, I went directly to my room. I had a class to attend, a lot of personal things I needed to get done, but all I could think about was Jarek and how I'd left him. There hadn't been shouting behind us when I left with the boss, and it was quiet outside right then, but I still wondered what happened. After what happened yesterday and the way I found Jarek today, I wondered if he was still okay before deciding that was a stupid thought. Of course, he wasn't okay. He wouldn't act that way with anyone if he were okay. Whatever the other staff member had done to annoy him, I knew the biggest fault probably lay with me. It's for the best. If I stayed away from him, then he could do what he came to do, find some way to heal on his own. All I was doing was making him miserable, and even worse than when he arrived, from what I'd seen. It really would be best for the both of us. You should be happy, I told myself. I finally got what I wanted, a legitimate excuse to keep away from Jarek, but I couldn't help wondering if it would be that easy. After yesterday, I doubted things would be as I thought they would be.
Chapter 11. Jerrik. After Sharon left, I ignored all the other people around. A few of the other guests had come out to view the show, and made my way into my room. I'd made trouble for her. It was the last thing I wanted to do, but I couldn't help myself. The alcohol didn't help, but at least I was on my last bottle now. Though I didn't know if that was a good or bad thing. I didn't know if I could get more. But I didn't feel like getting more to drink. I threw myself onto the bed and just lay there with my eyes closed, though I had no chance of falling back to sleep. I was exhausted, but it was more emotional than physical or mental. I didn't know how long I was left on my own before there was a knock on my door. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. I could guess who was on the other side of that door, but I didn't want to check only to realize I was wrong again, after I'd waited for her to come. Only, what if it was her, and by refusing to answer the door she never comes back? I had to wonder why this girl meant so much to me, that the idea of her absence made me feel a little depressed. Not that it mattered much. I went into my comfort zone, which was being intoxicated and not giving a F about anything. With a sigh, I got up off the bed and moved to the door, hesitating a moment before I opened it. Sharon was there, and I breathed a silent sigh of relief. "So you came back," I said lightly, stepping back and waiting for her to get inside. She hesitated a little herself, but she did step inside, and I smiled a little. "I see you're in a better mood," she retorted. I lost the smile and removed my gaze from hers. "Yeah. Sorry about that. They just kept insisting, and I kept insisting, and I just started yelling because I was so done," I muttered. I turned my back to her and went to sit on my bed. She sighed behind me, and I felt a little guilty. "I hope you didn't get into too much trouble with your boss." There was a strange expression on her face, and I frowned, but then it was gone and I wondered if I'd just imagined it. "Don't worry about it," she said dismissively. "I can look out for myself just fine. But I'd like to know what your problem is. And don't just say it's because of me," she added quickly when I opened my mouth. "Because you can't blame the fact that you have to be here on me. And I heard the rumors about your exploits, just like everybody else. I also know it's a more recent thing. You weren't like that when you first came here." I pursed my lips as I regarded her. It was true. Her not being there wasn't the only reason I was out of sorts. When I noticed the date yesterday, I'd berated myself for ever forgetting. I didn't deserve to just forget it all, like it never happened. Mom deserved so much more than that. More than either Dad or I had ever given her. "Sorry about what happened before," I said in apology, sounding awkward, but at least I got the words out. "But yeah, you're right. I have issues." I smiled, and I thought it was bitter. She wrinkled her nose at me before moving to sit beside me on the bed, putting some space between us. I would have liked to close it, but I knew she wouldn't like it if I did, so I stayed put. "Look, Jarek," she started slowly, and I felt my heart clench. "I can see that you're hurting. You don't have anyone, so I want to at least be there for you, and I don't mean more."
Censored.
"You came here for a reason, didn't you?" "Yeah." I might not have wanted to admit it, but I was growing a little out of control with the shit I did. Still, if Sharon hadn't been here, someone I knew that could make me face up to what my problem was, I could have told both the label and Tom that it would have been useless. "It's because it's today." Her brow furrowed slightly in confusion as she tilted her head a little to the side. "What day?" I took in a deep breath. My hands felt a little sweaty, so I wiped them down my pants. "It's just, remember when I mentioned my mom's death's anniversary?" I waited, and she nodded slowly. "Well, it's today. The day my mom hanged herself." Sharon gasped, but my eyes had already dropped from her face because I didn't want to see her reaction. I'd never told anyone. I never intended to tell anyone, except maybe a therapist the day I was forced, either by my work or by my own destructive behavior, to see one. How would she react if she knew the whole thing? I scoffed just thinking about it. But maybe I might be able to tell her. There was a reason no one, not even Tom, knew. I didn't consider any of the people that hung around me friends, because I knew what would happen if they had an inkling of what my past was like. It would be plastered all over the media, and I could live without that. It was already stuck in my head. I didn't need reminders from other people. "Oh, Jarek," Sharon whispered, her voice wet. I could have told her crying was pointless, but I felt a lump in my own throat. I had no idea. "I know this won't even help, but I am so sorry. I heard about it, but I just thought it was an accident." "It wasn't," I said, clearing my throat. "I just asked that the police not tell people exactly what happened. It was no one's business. And really, no one had ever bothered before. Had I been there with my mom instead of out in the city turning myself into a famous singer, I might have been able to prevent it all. My past wasn't exactly the best, what with my abusive dad and my mom who just stood by and watched because she was too afraid of having his wrath forced upon her instead. So she sacrificed her own child. That was hypocritical of me, though. Just because I was her kid didn't mean she had to put herself in the line of fire for me. If it had been her instead of me, I might have been relieved that Dad just left me alone. So I couldn't fault her for not wanting to get hurt, but that didn't stop me from hating her for it. The second I could get out of there, I did, and I never looked back. I worked my ass off, got signed, and became famous. Of course, my past wouldn't just remain in the past. Somehow, my mom got a hold of me, and she started to ask me for money. Really, I was surprised my dad didn't try at first, but I didn't ask why. I refused. And not long after, my mom killed herself. Do you know why? Sharon asked softly. I snorted, finding it a little funny how her thoughts were somewhat aligned with mine. Oh, I know why, I muttered. Not that I could tell her. That I practically killed my own mother. She never did anything for me, but that didn't change who she was to me, and I ignored her, only to receive a call from the local police that she was found dead, and my number was the last she called before it happened. After the shock, guilt had set in. It was so heavy, too, that I spent a whole week holed up in my high-rise apartment, just crying my eyes out and trying to function normally. The guilt only grew heavier, and eventually, I realized I needed release of the worst kind. Searching for that relief was what sent me off the rails. Would you mind telling me about it? Sharon asked tentatively. I sighed and leaned back on my arms, stretching out my legs. I refused to look over at her. She probably felt awkward with the silence between us, but I didn't feel like filling it with chatter. But I really wanted to tell someone, so at least one person knew about it. So it wasn't just me with this big secret eating me up inside. Yeah, there were other people that knew, but they weren't people I could talk to, and in spite of what had gone down between us the past few days, I did trust Sharon a lot. Not the whole story, maybe, but enough to explain things to her. So, I don't know if anyone in town ever realized that my dad wasn't exactly the nicest guy around, I started slowly. I think they did, Sharon said in attempted humor, releasing a strained laugh. He wasn't really liked by a lot of people, actually. Yeah, well, add me and my mother to that list. Though I think I deserve to take the top spot as the person that hates him the most after all the shit he gave me growing up. I'm going to guess it was bad, Sharon muttered. It was so much more than just bad, Sharon. If I could kill someone, it would probably be him. And the thing is, my mom never did anything about it. So really, I hated them both. Again, I could tell she was hesitating, carefully considering what she wanted to say, if she wanted to say anything at all. I didn't have to look to know because, in the short time since we'd reconnected, I knew she was the kind of person that thought through her words. What happened when you left town? Everyone was so surprised when it happened. It wasn't exactly planned. I'd saved up some money and one day I just decided, what the hell? I got up and out of there so fast. About a year later, I had fame. Then my mom contacted me, asking for money. You refused, didn't you? She intuited. That's why she did it. I nodded slowly. I always knew Sharon was smart. Jarek, you have to know it's not your fault, don't you? You weren't responsible for your mother's actions. I huffed out a little laugh. Are you reading my mind or something? I muttered. And yeah, it's not like I don't know. I stopped thinking of either of them as my parents a while ago. Getting the calls though, first from her, then the cops, what else was I supposed to think? I just felt so guilty. I tried to tell myself, and still do, that it's not my fault. But the guilt it doesn't go away, Sharon. I turned to meet her eyes and smiled sadly. For the rest of my life, I'm going to be thinking that I killed my own mother. And nothing can take that feeling away from me. I told her the truth. They say that talking about feelings should make it feel better. Getting it off your
censored.
That's what Tom said to me. Even a few friends that asked, but they never wanted to know the real reason that I felt so freaking cold inside. They all lied. Voicing it didn't make it better. it just made it worse. Chapter 11. Jerrik. After Sharon left, I ignored all the other people around. A few of the other guests had come out to view the show, and made my way into my room. I'd made trouble for her. It was the last thing I wanted to do, but I couldn't help myself. The alcohol didn't help, but at least I was on my last bottle now. Though I didn't know if that was a good or bad thing. I didn't know if I could get more. But I didn't feel like getting more to drink. I threw myself onto the bed and just lay there with my eyes closed, though I had no chance of falling back to sleep. I was exhausted, but it was more emotional than physical or mental. I didn't know how long I was left on my own before there was a knock on my door. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. I could guess who was on the other side of that door, but I didn't want to check only to realize I was wrong again, after I'd waited for her to come. Only, what if it was her, and by refusing to answer the door she never comes back? I had to wonder why this girl meant so much to me, that the idea of her absence made me feel a little depressed. Not that it mattered much. I went into my comfort zone, which was being intoxicated and not giving a F about anything. With a sigh, I got up off the bed and moved to the door, hesitating a moment before I opened it. Sharon was there, and I breathed a silent sigh of relief. "So you came back," I said lightly, stepping back and waiting for her to get inside. She hesitated a little herself, but she did step inside, and I smiled a little. "I see you're in a better mood," she retorted. I lost the smile and removed my gaze from hers. "Yeah. Sorry about that. They just kept insisting, and I kept insisting, and I just started yelling because I was so done," I muttered. I turned my back to her and went to sit on my bed. She sighed behind me, and I felt a little guilty. "I hope you didn't get into too much trouble with your boss." There was a strange expression on her face, and I frowned, but then it was gone and I wondered if I'd just imagined it. "Don't worry about it," she said dismissively. "I can look out for myself just fine. But I'd like to know what your problem is. And don't just say it's because of me," she added quickly when I opened my mouth. "Because you can't blame the fact that you have to be here on me. And I heard the rumors about your exploits, just like everybody else. I also know it's a more recent thing. You weren't like that when you first came here." I pursed my lips as I regarded her. It was true, her not being there wasn't the only reason I was out of sorts. When I noticed the date yesterday, I'd berated myself for ever forgetting. I didn't deserve to just forget it all, like it never happened. Mom deserved so much more than that. More than either Dad or I had ever given her. "Sorry about what happened before," I said in apology, sounding awkward, but at least I got the words out. "But yeah, you're right. I have issues." I smiled, and I thought it was bitter. She wrinkled her nose at me before moving to sit beside me on the bed, putting some space between us. I would have liked to close it, but I knew she wouldn't like it if I did, so I stayed put. "Look, Jerrik," she started slowly, and I felt my heart clench. "I can see that you're hurting. You don't have anyone, so I want to at least be there for you, and I don't mean more."
Censored.
"You came here for a reason, didn't you?" "Yeah." I might not have wanted to admit it, but I was growing a little out of control with the shit I did. Still, if Sharon hadn't been here, someone I knew that could make me face up to what my problem was, I could have told both the label and Tom that it would have been useless. "It's because it's today." Her brow furrowed slightly in confusion as she tilted her head a little to the side. "What day?" I took in a deep breath. My hands felt a little sweaty, so I wiped them down my pants. "It's just, remember when I mentioned my mom's death's anniversary?" I waited, and she nodded slowly. "Well, it's today. The day my mom hanged herself." Sharon gasped, but my eyes had already dropped from her face because I didn't want to see her reaction. I'd never told anyone. I never intended to tell anyone, except maybe a therapist the day I was forced, either by my work or by my own destructive behavior, to see one. How would she react if she knew the whole thing? I scoffed just thinking about it. But maybe I might be able to tell her. There was a reason no one, not even Tom, knew. I didn't consider any of the people that hung around me friends, because I knew what would happen if they had an inkling of what my past was like. It would be plastered all over the media, and I could live without that. It was already stuck in my head. I didn't need reminders from other people. "Oh, Jarek," Sharon whispered, her voice wet. I could have told her crying was pointless, but I felt a lump in my own throat. I had no idea. "I know this won't even help, but I am so sorry. I heard about it, but I just thought it was an accident." "It wasn't," I said, clearing my throat. "I just asked that the police not tell people exactly what happened. It was no one's business." And really, no one had ever bothered before. Had I been there with my mom instead of out in the city turning myself into a famous singer, I might have been able to prevent it all. My past wasn't exactly the best, what with my abusive dad and my mom who just stood by and watched because she was too afraid of having his wrath forced upon her instead. So she sacrificed her own child. That was hypocritical of me, though. Just because I was her kid didn't mean she had to put herself in the line of fire for me. If it had been her instead of me, I might have been relieved that Dad just left me alone. So I couldn't fault her for not wanting to get hurt, but that didn't stop me from hating her for it. The second I could get out of there, I did, and I never looked back. I worked my ass off, got signed, and became famous. Of course, my past wouldn't just remain in the past. Somehow, my mom got a hold of me, and she started to ask me for money. Really, I was surprised my dad didn't try at first, but I didn't ask why. I refused. And not long after, my mom killed herself. "Do you know why?" Sharon asked softly. I snorted, finding it a little funny how her thoughts were somewhat aligned with mine. "Oh, I know why," I muttered. "Not that I could tell her. That I practically killed my own mother. She never did anything for me, but that didn't change who she was to me, and I ignored her, only to receive a call from the local police that she was found dead, and my number was the last she called before it happened." After the shock, guilt had set in. It was so heavy, too, that I spent a whole week holed up in my high-rise apartment, just crying my eyes out and trying to function normally. The guilt only grew heavier, and eventually, I realized I needed release of the worst kind. Searching for that relief was what sent me off the rails. "Would you mind telling me about it?" Sharon asked tentatively. I sighed and leaned back on my arms, stretching out my legs. I refused to look over at her. She probably felt awkward with the silence between us, but I didn't feel like filling it with chatter. But I really wanted to tell someone, so at least one person knew about it. So it wasn't just me with this big secret eating me up inside. Yeah, there were other people that knew, but they weren't people I could talk to, and in spite of what had gone down between us the past few days, I did trust Sharon a lot. Not the whole story, maybe, but enough to explain things to her. So, I don't know if anyone in town ever realized that my dad wasn't exactly the nicest guy around, I started slowly. I think they did," Sharon said in attempted humor, releasing a strained laugh. "He wasn't really liked by a lot of people, actually. Yeah, well, add me and my mother to that list. Though I think I deserve to take the top spot as the person that hates him the most after all the shit he gave me growing up." "I'm going to guess it was bad," Sharon muttered. "It was so much more than just bad, Sharon. If I could kill someone, it would probably be him. And the thing is, my mom never did anything about it. So really, I hated them both." Again, I could tell she was hesitating, carefully considering what she wanted to say, if she wanted to say anything at all. I didn't have to look to know because, in the short time since we'd reconnected, I knew she was the kind of person that thought through her words. "What happened when you left town?" Everyone was so surprised when it happened. "It wasn't exactly planned. I'd saved up some money and one day I just decided, what the hell? I got up and out of there so fast. About a year later, I had fame. Then my mom contacted me, asking for money." "You refused, didn't you?" she intuited. "That's why she did it." I nodded slowly. I always knew Sharon was smart. Jarek, you have to know it's not your fault, don't you? You weren't responsible for your mother's actions. I huffed out a little laugh. Are you reading my mind or something? I muttered. And yeah, it's not like I don't know. I stopped thinking of either of them as my parents a while ago. Getting the calls though, first from her then the cops, what else was I supposed to think? I just felt so guilty. I tried to tell myself, and still do, that it's not my fault. But the guilt it doesn't go away, Sharon. I turned to meet her eyes and smiled sadly. For the rest of my life, I'm going to be thinking that I killed my own mother. And nothing can take that feeling away from me. I told her the truth. They say that talking about feelings should make it feel better. Getting it off your
Censored.
That's what Tom said to me. Even a few friends that asked, but they never wanted to know the real reason that I felt so freaking cold inside. They all lied. Voicing it didn't make it better. It just made it worse.
Chapter 12. Sharon. Holy hell. I tried to stay away from him, but as I walked back to my room, Henry's words on my mind, the image of Jarek, tired, angry, and somehow hurt, plagued me. Beneath all of that rough, angry glaring had been a little boy with a broken heart, though I doubt anyone else but me had seen it. Then I'd found myself at his door, knocking, instead of doing exactly what Henry had ordered me to do. Jarek needed a friend. I knew I was all he had at that point. I'd known Jarek had problems, but I never thought they'd be quite as bad as what he'd just laid out for me. I wasn't one for gossip, even though back in our town there wasn't anything else more interesting. Still, I didn't like to pry, so it wasn't like I knew all that much about his family, but… damn it. This is it, isn't it? I murmured in realization. Why you've been acting the way you have recently. I heard all the rumors, even tried to follow a few. It didn't seem like you at all. Only, like a lot of people probably, I figured it was the fame getting to him, even if it was a little late. And to think he had this on his mind, with the way I'd treated him. I felt the need to apologize again. I felt like I needed to get on my knees and beg for forgiveness, because I had done him wrong when he was already dealing with his own shit. My shit was nothing in comparison to this. Without truly thinking about it, I leaned forward to cover the space between us and pulled him into a hug because I had a feeling he needed it, from someone that was legitimately trying to offer him comfort. I doubted there had been anyone there to offer him even that, or he might not have ended up as badly as he did. My arms wound around his shoulders, and I tugged him lightly to bring his head to rest on my
Censored.
As I held onto him tightly. I was tempted to cry, my eyes stinging with tears, but I didn't know how he would take it, so I was holding myself back. I am really sorry for what you've had to go through, Jarek, I murmured, because I couldn't help myself, pressing it to the top of his head. And even sorrier that you don't have anyone to help you through this. He was stiff in my arms, like he didn't know how to receive and accept affection, and I had a feeling he didn't. But after a few moments, he did relax into me, his arms circling around my waist and tugging me closer, and I went with it. I ended up on his lap, straddling his thighs, with his arms holding onto me tightly, his face buried in my
Censored.
As I hugged him tighter. After a few long moments when he didn't say anything, I brushed my fingers through his hair before getting a light grip to tilt his head backward. Is there anything you'd like? I offered. Anything at all that I can get you. He was surprised for a moment, but then he smiled, leaning towards my
Censored.
so he could press a warm wet above my
Censored.
I felt my breath hitch, and my body shiver at the intimate attention. There's a lot that I want from you, Sharon, he said huskily, glancing up at me. But we can start right here. The hand I had in his hair clenched tightly. I probably tugged on his hair a little, though he didn't complain. But I hesitated. Jarek, are you really sure you want?
Censored.
Now of all times? It might not be the best idea. Actually, the opposite is true, he countered, his hands moving to my hips to pull me snugly against his. My eyes went wide as I felt him hard and ready for me. I need this, Sharon, please. I'm not trying to use you. I really do want you, but what I need most is a distraction, and I have you right in front of me. Please don't push me away. It was the pleading that made me cave. I wondered, in the past 5 years while he made his fame and fortune, just how many times he'd had to say please and genuinely mean it. Even if there hadn't been any underlying meaning, I was pretty sure all he'd have to do was tell me he needed me, and I would do as he wanted. Tell me what to do for you then, I murmured. I ran my hand through his hair, smoothing it back a few times.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
This can't ever end. He whispered, but I still heard him. I was so comfortable I could have fallen asleep like that, but his words made me tense. Then I realized I still had to get back to work, and I groaned for an entirely different reason. What is it? Jarek whispered, his hand sliding through my hair. Work, remember? I still have to go. His hand stilled, but only for a moment, then he was running his hand through my hair again, his other arm tightening around my waist. Just stay a bit longer. I sighed, reluctant, but I knew I would anyway. Only for a few minutes. I was nervous about the way Jarek made me feel. Not only did he make me feel good, but he made me feel better than I had in such a long time.
Chapter 13. Jerrik. I hated to admit it, but I wasn't acting my age. Though, in a way, it should have been fair that I was acting like some lovesick teenager. I hadn't had the freedom to act how I pleased until I was 20 and on my own after all. It did make me feel a lot better that Sharon was in the same boat as me. I looked up at the sound of an opening door, to see the center of my thoughts coming out of my bathroom in one of my tank tops and nothing else. She was still a little wet, and the fabric clung to her, but as I watched her
Censored
and hips sway as she came over to where I was lying on the bed, I couldn't complain. Hey there, she murmured. She raised one of her knees onto the bed and leaned across my
censored
Topeka on my lips. When she went to pull back, I followed her, but because I didn't want to get up, I let her go as I slumped back into the pillows. I need to hurry back to my place and get changed. My eyes ran over her sexy body again, this time an eyebrow arching. Are you going out like that? She mirrored my look. Like hell, Jarek. I don't think anyone will see me, but I'm not going to tempt fate like that. I chuckled as she turned away from me to go and pick up her clothes. Are you sure you can't stay longer? I called out. Of course I can't. I'm not supposed to be sleeping in here at all, you know. It just means that we'll get caught quicker. I sighed. It was quickly approaching my time to leave, and I had a hard time believing I had been at the retreat for so long already. I was meant to stay there for a few weeks, and besides that first one, they had gone by so fast. We hadn't talked about what would happen after my time was up. I didn't live anywhere near the retreat, and if I kept making trips to come and visit her, we would be found out. I had a feeling she didn't want the media interfering in her life as they did in mine. I watched as she pulled the tank off and put on her bra, then her dress. She didn't bother putting on her panties, and I grinned. That was mostly my fault. That she was standing there all dressed, knowing she had no panties on, was making me hot. If only my recovery period after orgasm was as impressive as hers, I could have tried to talk her into a quickie. As it was growing brighter outside, and more people than I would have thought were up by sunrise. Come over here for a sec, I called, my voice husky. Sharon gave me a suspicious look, but she did get closer. I pushed myself to sit up, and when she was close enough, put an arm around her neck to pull her down to me for a
censored.
I'll see you soon, I murmured, with our faces close enough for our lips to brush together as I spoke. Later, Jarek, she said in answer, pecking my lips before pulling away and heading for the door. In a moment, she was gone. After a few minutes, when I didn't feel like going back to sleep, I decided to get up instead and go shower. I didn't have any scheduled sessions for the day, but I wanted to be out for breakfast. It was an hour or so when a knock on my door let me know breakfast was ready. I was in such a good mood recently, I'd stopped bothering the staff, and they'd learned to give me my space. The knock was simple, 3 raps against the door, and whoever it was left me to my own devices. Showered and dressed, I left my room. "Hey there, Jerry." I turned an unimpressed look at the bastard with the gall to call me that. He was about as big as me but slighter, with brown hair and brown eyes. He stayed close to me, though we'd never talked before because, well, I wasn't interested in talking to people. He had been there the day I blew up on that member of staff and got Sharon in trouble with her boss. Later, when I'd gone for dinner, he started talking to me out of nowhere. Now he thought we were friends or something. But I couldn't exactly say I minded. "I've told you not to call me that, moron." He rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on, it's a good name." "You make me sound like a kid," I retorted. "How would you like it if I called you Toby, huh?" Tobias just snickered. "It suits you more than me, though." It was my turn to roll my eyes, but I couldn't exactly refuse. Now that my head was clearer, I was ashamed that I'd acted so poorly before. It was a wonder I hadn't gotten myself kicked out of the retreat. "Hey, you two." Brittany, another guest at the retreat, called over to us. "Are we heading for breakfast, or do the two of you need some time alone? We've got a class after this, and if you're late, we'll leave you behind." Tobias smacked my arm lightly. "Come on, you know the only reason we're late is that this guy needs a babysitter." I rolled my eyes again, exaggerating the movement, and Brittany and the other 4 people in our little group, standing right behind her, laughed at the two of us. I'd learned to socialize, so when I couldn't see Sharon on some days, I at least had someone else to hang out with and talk to. And I came to realize other people at the retreat weren't half bad, but Tobias, Brittany, and the others were the ones I hung around most. Either they didn't know I was a famous singer, or they did and they just didn't care, because they treated me like a normal person. I couldn't remember anyone besides Tom that had done that before. People hung around me more for what my position and image could get them, than because they liked me. I didn't exactly have a shining personality, so it was a wonder they put up with me at all. But as I followed behind the group, first to breakfast then on to class, I knew these guys were a little different. Hanging around them was what allowed me to graduate from meeting a practitioner one-on-one to join a class with more people, and I found it so much easier to relax that way. Especially around this group. I'd come to discover, as I came out of my shell, in my way and started opening up to this group, that it wasn't just me going through shit. Everyone had their demons they had locked up in their closet. I was the only one that lost my shit, but these guys talked to me because in their ways, they understood. Nothing had been said outright, but enough hints were dropped. And yet, unlike me, they all still managed to have normal relationships with others. They talked and laughed. From the outside, it was hard to tell they were anything but happy people. It made me realize something that I really should have known from the beginning. Compared to other people, what I went through didn't rule my life, not unless I let it. Things happen to people, good and bad, but it wasn't about that. It was about how you dealt with the shit in your life. Thanks to Sharon and my new friends, I was finding newer, safer ways to cope. And I had hope that maybe one day, I'd forgive myself for what happened with my mother.
Chapter 14. Sharon. There was a knock on my room's door, and I looked up at it in surprise. I still had some time before breakfast, and more before I needed to dress and go to work, but I already had my uniform on, which just consisted of white pants and a matching shirt. A sign of purity, which was kind of crazy, because most of the girls were far from that when they were away from here. I didn't feel much better than them, as I thought about the time that I'd just spent with Jarek. It was so strange because I never got visitors. Samantha had come to my room a couple of times, but she usually let herself in, or called out for me to let her in. Whoever was on the other side of my door waited silently. I had an idea who it could be, and I was part hopeful, part apprehensive that it was him. But no, I hadn't allowed Jarek anywhere near my room, though I'd gone to his plenty of times already for some clandestine fun. After a moment of hesitation, I went to open the door. And I wasn't sure if it was good or bad that it wasn't Jarek there, but Henry instead. Can I help you, sir? I asked politely, even though I knew what he came for. He tilted his head towards the inside of my room. May I come in? Of course, I said immediately, stepping aside to let him through, then letting the door close. He let himself inside, and I wanted him back out instantly. I didn't have much to call mine, but this little space had been mine for the time I'd been working at the retreat. My boss looked around at all of it, and part of me rebelled at the idea of someone I didn't know invading my space and eyeing my things. If he hadn't been Henry, I wouldn't have let him in at all. Was there something you wanted me to do for you, sir? I asked tentatively, after moments of silence. He stopped, then turned to face me. The look on his face surprised me because I thought he looked a little tired. But then that look was gone, replaced by the professional face he held up in front of all the staff. Sharon, we talked last time, and I was pretty sure we understood each other at the time. Oh yeah. He knows, I thought to myself. And he was not happy with it. We understood each other perfectly, sir, I replied honestly. I'd understood what he'd told me. I'd simply disregarded what he told me and did what I wanted. Hell, I tried to be discreet and I'd been so sure I was successful. It was almost time for Jarek to leave anyway, so why couldn't this confrontation have waited? But in spite of all that, I was able to stand tall, hands at my sides, and meet Henry's gaze head-on. This was nothing like the last time, where I practically advertised my guilt. At that moment, I didn't think there was anything for me to regret, certainly not what Jarek and I had between us. Henry's eyebrows arched in his surprise, and I almost wanted to smile at how calm we were both being about this. You say you understood everything, he said slowly to clarify. I nodded sharply. Yes, sir. He hummed, then glanced around again. Sharon, we are both busy people, or at least I am. So I'm just going to come out with it and ask. Are you sleeping with our client? Specifically the one I warned you against. I took in a deep breath, then let air out through my nose. I met his gaze without flinching and nodded again. Yes, sir, I repeated. I am. He waited for a moment as we tried to stare each other down, but no one was winning. After a while, he nodded back. Very well, he said blandly. Sharon, we have been very pleased with your service so far, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Only take what's yours, and your last paycheck will be deposited to your account. I nodded along to what he said. It was inevitable. I had to admit, especially with how careless I was being. I didn't exactly hide that I wasn't staying in my room, or that I was sneaking back in just to change into my uniform and start work. Now with this, I wouldn't have to do that anymore. Henry sent another glance around the room, nodded to himself, and walked toward the door. I had a feeling they already had someone in this room, but I let it slide because it wasn't like it was home for me. But then he paused in the doorway and turned back to look at me. Just so you know, you will not be getting a reference, no matter how good your work has been. Then he turned, and he was gone. I could have done without his parting shot, because it wasn't like I didn't know. It was part of the rules for when an employee broke regulations, as I had. Why write a reference for someone that didn't deserve it, after all? I closed the door behind him and leaned back against it. I was still in uniform, but I didn't have any use for it anymore. I was fired. And surprisingly, I was okay with it. Getting employment at retreats, especially one like this one, wasn't exactly an easy task, and almost impossible without any reference from this job. But even though I should, I didn't care whether or not I landed a job at another retreat. Jarek had come out of nowhere and intruded in my life, but I had to admit, at least to myself, that he'd given me so much more. Whether or not he helped me find another job, or tried to support me, or I ended up starting again in some other town. I couldn't regret the past few weeks because, in that time, I would say I felt the happiest I'd ever felt since the day I left our town. Chapter 15. Sharon. I changed back into casual clothes and left my room. It was light out, but since I was no longer an employee anyway, it wouldn't be wrong of me to go and visit Jarek in the daylight, worrying about keeping our little affair a secret. I had to wonder how the boss found out, but it didn't matter. When I stopped at Jarek's door, I waited for a moment, feeling a little excited to be seeing Jarek. I made myself knock on the door and wait. Not long after, the door opened, and Jarek stood there and smiled at me. He looked happy to see me, but he was also confused. Then he took in how casually I was dressed, and he glanced around before turning to me, confused. Not that I'm not happy to see you, but what's up? I thought you had work. I shrugged and smiled coyly up at him. I did. He looked even more confused. His head tilted a little to the side as he regarded me. Okay, I don't know what's going on, but can you just tell me? I've never been good at guessing games. I laughed, and I almost surprised myself with how light the sound was. Don't worry so much about it, I can tell you later. I wanted to ask you something. I paused and pursed my lips, thinking about what we could do now that I didn't have work in the way. I had peeked at his schedule, and I knew he didn't have anything on his plate for the day unless he decided to hang out with some of the other people at the retreat. I hadn't missed him growing more social. What did you want to ask me then? Jarek sounded curious. Then I had the best answer. Why don't we go and visit your mom's grave? I said carefully, trying not to cut him off the idea if he hadn't already gone. I mean, if you haven't been, you should probably go on your own, but I thought we could do it together. If he was going to move on from his guilt, he was going to need closure. There was no one he could talk to. He hadn't mentioned much about his dad, so I thought he was out of the picture, so all he could do was visit his mother. Even if she couldn't talk back, he could talk to her all he wanted, and it might help him if only a little. He had improved a lot since he first came, but that wasn't to say that he was 100% okay. I waited, chewing lightly on my lip as I watched his face keenly. I wasn't sure what reaction I expected, but seeing his expression go blank wasn't it. I had no idea what he thought when he did that, and though his eyes were still on me, I had a feeling he wasn't seeing me. Jarek? I called after a minute had passed and still no reaction. Hello there, I waved my hand in front of his face. He started slightly, his gaze focusing on me. Then he gave me a sheepish look. Sorry for spacing out on you. I wanted to say yes. And I would love for you to come with me, Sharon. If anything, I'm pretty sure I can't go on my own. The look in his eyes as he said it was so sincere, I believed him. Do you want to go and change first, then come meet me? I offered. The car is where you saw it last. Sure, Sharon. And really, thank you. I waited for him to close the door and turned around. I already had all my stuff packed and in the trunk, so I wouldn't need to come back. I'd have to let Jarek know at some point that I'd lost my job, but it was still too early to let him in on it. I'd have to think about where I was going to stay and what I was going to do about bills at a later time, but right then, I was going to be Jarek's support as much as he would let me. Around 15 minutes later, we met up at my car, and Jarek got in the passenger seat. The drive was silent, and neither of us felt the need to fill it with idle chatter. We were going to visit someone's grave, after all. Some respect would be warranted. Several hours later, I parked the car and we got out, and I turned to Jarek. Do you know where to go, or can we find someone who can tell us where her grave is? He smiled down at me, his expression tight. I know the way. I didn't ask if he'd come before on his own, or how he knew. I just took his hand, and let him lead the way to where his mom was buried. I wondered what he would say to his mom, and if he would be fine with me being there to hear it all, but I didn't ask that either. After we were done at the cemetery some hours later, I drove us to a hotel just outside of town. We checked into a small room and went where we were directed. My feet
Censored.
a little from all the standing, but I felt it was worth it, so I wouldn't begrudge a little pain for the relief Jarek now felt. I didn't think everything was entirely okay, but at least now he had a better outlook, far removed from his old bleak one. "I don't think I'll be going back to the retreat again," he said once we were in the room, closing the door and leaning back against it, watching me as I slipped off my shoes and made my way to the bed. "I can just have someone check my stuff out for me later." I hummed. "Lucky you that you can have people do things for you," I said with a snort, though all in good humor. I pulled off my jacket and got on the bed, piling pillows against the headboard and moving so I could sit up with my back against the pillows. When I turned my eyes to Jarek, he was still standing at the door with his eyes on me. I couldn't tell what he was thinking just by the look on his face, but even from across the room, I could see the telltale shine of tears in his eyes. I smiled at him and held my arms out. "Come here, Jarek," I called softly. "You don't have to be alone anymore, right? So come here." He smiled and it was shaky. He pushed himself off the door and walked across the room, taking off his shoes and socks on the way, then his jacket before crawling on the bed and up my body, until he could bury his face in my neck and wrap his arms around me. I held him close, stroking one hand through his short hair. "Are you okay?" I asked quietly, almost in a whisper. He hummed, the vibrations against my neck making me gasp. "I'll be fine," he said reassuringly. He pulled back to give me another smile, this one firmer than the last. "It's way more liberating than throwing mud into the sea. Thank you though for coming with me." I smiled back, cupping his face between my hands. "It was no problem at all," I told him honestly. "I was more than happy to accompany you." I couldn't stand to see him in pain, but more because I just really wanted to. I leaned closer and
Censored.
him. It started out slow and soft, and unlike the other times we ended up in bed together, it stayed that way.
Censored.
Might as well be time, because it was just the press and slide of lips, with a little nibbling here and there, taking things slow. We drifted out of the
Censored.
naturally, not because one of us needed to catch our breath. Our eyes met and we smiled. "I have a condom in my back pocket," he said with a grin. I snorted. "I'm not even surprised by that." "I always carry one in my wallet though," he said with a shrug. "Just to be safe. And my wallet is the only thing I brought with me." I smiled and lightly pecked him on the lips. "Well, that's good for the two of us then, isn't it?"
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Chapter 16. Jerrik. I woke up feeling well rested and went to stretch my body, only to realize there was a body curled in my arms, and I looked down with slightly widened eyes, only to smile when I realized it was Sharon, and I remembered last night. This was a first for me. Usually, when she spent the night with me, she was up early getting ready to leave, or she woke me up, and we had a round of mourning.
Censored.
Then she left. But this was the first time I woke up first, and seeing her snuggled up to me was adorable. But I knew I had to move. I still had a few days at the retreat before I had to leave, but I was checking out early. My agent shouldn't complain. I was feeling and acting way better. I didn't know just what arrangements he'd made before having me go there, but surely, if there were a report to be given, he would just hear how much I'd improved. The one thing I would regret was not getting to say goodbye to Tom and the others. But I had a few of their numbers and social media usernames, so I could always find them later. Get up and get your shit in order first. I growled at my brain for playing logic so early. Carefully so she wouldn't wake up, I moved away from the bed, leaving her with a
Censored.
on her forehead. My phone sat on a nightstand and I reached for it. As I waited for her to wake up, I paced around the room and made various calls. Then I thought about breakfast. The hotel wasn't so big that they served room service. I wondered if they served meals at all. We'd have to check out and look for a place to get a good meal, then we'd have to decide where to go from there. I felt a slight pang in my
Censored.
when I thought Sharon would have to go back to the retreat, while I went back to my apartment in the city. The sound from the bed distracted me, and I looked to see Sharon waking up. She stretched out her limbs as her eyes fluttered open, only to close again. I glanced at the curtains I'd opened to let some light in, and moved so I could block some of the harsh light from her eyes. Her hand patted the bed beside her, only to frown when she found nothing there. Her eyes opened again, squinting first before she opened her eyes wider. When she saw me, she smiled. "Hey there," she said lazily, voice rough from sleep. "What are you doing up so early?" I sat down on the edge of the bed and leaned down to give her a good morning peck. "I just woke up and didn't feel like falling back to sleep," she hummed, sitting up slowly. The covers fell down her body, bearing her.
Censored.
And she didn't try to cover herself up. With how much time we'd spent
Censored.
together, there was no reason for her to hide her body from me. I felt a frisson of interest go through me, but I could wipe it aside easily because I was so damn relaxed. "How do you feel about breakfast?" I asked, leaning forward to run my hand through her hair. It stood up in some places, and I tried my best to smooth it down. "When you're ready, we can leave and find some place to eat." "And after?" I let my voice trail off as I thought about after. We hadn't been together long, but I knew I didn't want what we had to just end like that. But there was no way to know whether she felt the same. While neither of us had used the 3 magic words yet, I was pretty sure she at least cared for me as I did for her. I wanted it to be more. Maybe if it were more, she'd want to be with me. "After what?" Sharon asked, tilting her head a little to the side. "What is it?" I shrugged, acting nonchalant. "I was just thinking about what will happen after today. I have to get back eventually, especially since I won't be going back to the retreat." She blinked at me. "Oh. That." My lips tightened. It wasn't quite the reaction I wanted, though I wasn't sure just what I expected from her. Did I want her to beg me to take her away? I knew she wasn't that type of girl. She was as independent as I was, making her way out of our small town on her own and finding a life for herself. I went big while she went for comfortable, but it wasn't like she needed me. I wanted to beg her to stay with me and not go back to the retreat, to a job she told me meant a lot to her. Instead, I took her face in my hands and pressed a
Censored.
against her lips. After a short moment, I pulled back and met her eyes, clearer now that her mind was waking up. "Sharon, why don't you come with me?" I asked point blank. I could have tried to lead her up to it, try to seduce her into the idea, like how I seduced her into my bed. I'd offered her something similar before, only I'd spoken differently about it, and thinking back now, I winced. I pretty much implied I would be paying her if she stayed with me, and we had.
Censored.
I would apologize for it at some point, but I didn't want to bring it up right then and risk her telling me no just because she was annoyed with me. It took a moment for my words to sink in. She blinked her eyes a couple of times before they widened on my face. Her hands cupped my cheeks and she pressed her forehead to mine. "Do you mean that?" she whispered. "More than anything," I replied readily. "I have a confession to make," she said softly, smiling. "Remember my old job? I kinda got fired." I blinked at her in surprise. "What? When? Why?" She shrugged, looking so carefree for someone that had just lost their job. It was so different to the reaction she'd had when she worried about our secret being found out. "It was just yesterday before I came to you. I don't know how, but the boss found out and he just calmly told me to leave. So I was kind of hoping you still wanted me around." The smile she sent me was edged in relief, and I made a sound of surprise. "Why would you even think that?" "Of course I want you around, Sharon. I don't know if you realize this, but you're good for me." She rolled her eyes. "I think we've talked a lot about flattery, Jarek." "Not enough," I countered. "Not if you can't tell the difference between me flattering you and me saying what's the simple truth. You do realize that without you, I'd probably still be as bad as I was when I first came to the retreat?" Her lips pursed in disbelief. "You do understand the position you're in, don't you? You're famous, Jarek. When you get back out there, you're going to be reminded that you get to see extraordinary people a lot more often than most people. Maybe, but remember when I told you none of the people I kept near were considered friends of mine? I waited until she nodded. I need someone like you, someone less poisonous and more positive, someone I trust. You make me feel like no one ever has in my life, Sharon. With you, I feel whole. And I want to keep feeling that, for as long as you want to keep me around. For a moment, she just stared back into my eyes with a blank expression on her face. Then she smiled sweetly and wrapped her arms around my neck to pull me into a hug. Then we'll be together for a long while, Jarek, she said simply. I hope so, because for the first time in my life, something about it felt right, and it started and ended with Sharon. Epilogue. Sharon. There were so many people. I knew Jarek was famous, but being put in a concert filled with all his fans was a little overwhelming. I wondered idly what they would do to me if they knew just how close he and I are. Would they hurt me for it? Probably. I'd heard of fans doing a lot of ridiculous things. I was situated near the front of the stage, in a sort of VIP area compared to the rest of the space. There was even a line between me and the rest of the crowd, and I felt that only made me stand out more. But I hardly cared. Jarek stood there on the stage, tall and proud like he should be, like I hadn't seen him before. The stage was set up with some music equipment, a couple of guitars, a piano, and a set of drums. There were other people on the stage, setting themselves up with their instruments, while Jarek stood in front of a microphone stand. He was in his signature look, jeans and a tank top that showed off his physique and the tattoos that littered his shoulders, neck, and
Censored.
He sang, and with all the noise, from the music to the crowd yelling in appreciation, I could barely hear his voice, even with the speaker. At some point, I was going to ask him to sing for me so I could listen purely to his voice. But I had to admit, his singing was amazing. It was a new song, and I listened carefully to the lyrics. They painted a beautiful story, and I would have to look through them a little more closely to be sure, but I thought it had something to do with us. The thought of that had me swaying with the music, and I wished we could dance to it together. As the song drew to a close, the sound of screaming fans roared up again, and I was tempted to cover my ears a little to relieve them. Pretty much every one of his concerts was like this, and if he had anything to say about it, I'd be appearing at many more of them, so I had to get used to it at some point. Thank you, everybody. Jarek shouted into his microphone, eliciting even louder screams from the fans. Did you guys like my new song? He went on to say. I don't think people even answered verbally, it was still just screaming. I couldn't help rolling my eyes, but a part of me felt proud. All these people there to see Jarek, and I was the one he would be taking home. He talked some more, calling out for appreciation for the guys on the instruments, who waved in response to all the noise they received, and it was enough to have me cave in and cover my ears. Then he waited for the room to quiet down before he went on. Now, I have a little surprise planned for the audience and someone very close to me, Jarek said. Instead of more screaming, the crowd went so silent it was eerie. But I wasn't paying attention, my mind replaying his words. I wondered if he meant me, and at that moment as I looked at him up on stage, he looked down. Our eyes met and he smiled at me. The guys and I are going to play a brand new song, one that hasn't even been to the recording studio yet, so you all get to hear it first, live. He had to pause while the crowd showed their appreciation. This new song is dedicated to this someone, who is very special to me, so I hope she likes the song. I barely heard the crowd, my mind focused on Jarek's voice as he began to sing, straining to catch all the lyrics. I changed my plan just slightly. I would have Jarek sing this song specifically to me when we were alone at home. I swayed a little to the music, a smile forming on my face to match the one he had on. We were surrounded by hundreds of people, and there were plenty more watching live. Not to mention the people that would catch the replay. But just then, it felt so much like there was only the two of us. Jarek didn't look away from me the entire song, his eyes sliding closed in some places, only to open again quickly, like he was afraid I'd disappear. Near the end of the song, he looked off to the side. I was a little sad to lose his attention, but then I felt someone touch my arm. I started, but it was only Jarek's agent. He gave me a smile and gestured for me to follow. After some hesitation, I did. I was pulled on stage, feeling incredibly confused. I would have rather stayed off it, but it wasn't like people didn't know we were together by then. We had been for a few months already. When Jarek went back into his career better than ever, of course, more attention was paid to him, and I just happened to be caught one day. Somehow I was still given plenty of freedom, so I didn't mind it much. But Jarek had never done something like this before, so it was something of a surprise when I was brought right to his side, and he took one of my hands in his. My eyes widened slightly when he suddenly went down on one knee, right there on the stage, in front of so many people. Later, I would probably think back and feel some mortification, because I was a woman that liked her privacy, and it was such a special moment. But right then, I was unable to make a coherent thought, because there was only one thing this could mean. Jarek was going to propose. Sure enough, he reached into his pocket and pulled something out. Funny how I hadn't spotted it during the concert, when he had only been a few feet away from me. He opened the small box with his one hand to show me the ring, simple gold with 3 small diamonds, the middle one slightly bigger than the other 2. I was crying and smiling, and I wanted to laugh, but I didn't think I would hear myself. It was so loud, louder than ever, and I didn't think he'd even hear me if I said yes. So I just gave him a rapid nod. "I love you, Sharon," he said, and I could hear it all around us, so I knew he'd used his microphone. I pulled back with a pout because that was cheating. But I took his hand that held the mic and brought it to my mouth, taking a deep breath so I could say it clearly. "I love you, Jarek. Thank you for reading my book. If you like this story, I think you'll enjoy my book. Download Rough Start now. Free today. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for all your support, in whatever form it takes. With love and appreciation. Summer." Check out Summer's entire collection at www.summercooper.com/books. About Summer Cooper. Thank you so much for reading. Without you, it wouldn't be possible for me to be a full-time author. I hope you enjoy reading my books as much as I do writing them. Besides, obviously, reading and writing, I also love cuddling my dogs, shouting at Alexa being upside down, aka yoga, and driving my family cray-cray. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Goodreads, BookBub. Get in touch at hello@summercooper.com. www.summercooper.com. Closing credits. This has been Rock Hard Retreat. Written by Summer Cooper. Auto-narrated using Google technology. Copyright 2024 by Lovie Books Limited. Production copyright 2024 by Lovie Books Limited.